There's a strange feeling that comes with certain discoveries, a sense that you're not uncovering something new, but remembering something you were never meant to forget. Across ancient remains, we encounter the same quiet contradictions: simplicity hiding complexity, silence hiding intention, and design that feels too deliberate to be accidental. It's as if these creations were never meant to be understood all at once, only revealed in fragments over time. The deeper we look, the more the past begins to feel incomplete. Not because it is missing, but because it is being revealed slowly. And that leads to a haunting thought. What if the mystery isn't what they left behind, but why they chose to leave it this way? Teotihuacan, located about 40 kilometers northeast of Mexico City, is one of the most magnificent and mysterious ancient cities ever built in history. During its peak between the 1st and 6th centuries CE, the city covered more than 20 square kilometers and may have been home to over 100,000 people, making it one of the largest urban centers of the ancient world. Long before the rise of the Aztec Empire, Teotihuacan already served as a major center of power in Mesoamerica. However, one of the most astonishing mysteries is that the identity of the civilization that built this enormous city remains unknown. When the Aztecs discovered its ruins centuries after it had been abandoned, they believed the city was far too grand to have been constructed by humans, so they named it Teotihuacan, its meaning the place where the gods were born. The name reflects the deep sense of mystery that still surrounds the city today, as scientists and historians continue trying to understand how such a massive and sophisticated metropolis could emerge, flourish, and then disappear with almost no historical records left behind. Walking through Teotihuacan today reveals a city whose design reflects remarkable mathematical planning and cosmological symbolism. The central axis of the city, known as the Avenue of the Dead, stretches for more than 4 kilometers and forms the backbone of the entire urban layout. What is particularly striking is that this grand avenue and many surrounding structures are aligned with a precise orientation that deviates approximately 15.5 degrees east of true north. This consistent alignment appears intentional and has fascinated researchers for decades. Some scholars suggest the orientation may correspond to important astronomical events, such as solar positions on specific dates or the cycles of Venus, a celestial body that played a crucial role in Mesoamerican cosmology. If this interpretation is correct, then Teotihuacan was not simply a city built for practical living, but a carefully designed cosmic landscape where architecture mirrored the structure of the universe itself. The enormous pyramids rising along the avenue reinforce this impression of deliberate symbolism and monumental ambition. The towering Pyramid of the Sun, one of the largest pyramids ever constructed in the Americas, rises more than 60 meters above the surrounding plain and required the movement of millions of tons of material. Nearby stands the slightly smaller yet equally imposing Pyramid of the Moon, which anchors the northern end of the ceremonial avenue and frames the city against the dramatic backdrop of surrounding mountains. These immense structures demonstrate a level of engineering and labor organization that continues to challenge modern explanations, particularly when considering that the builders lacked metal tools, wheeled transport, or large domesticated animals capable of hauling heavy loads. Beneath the surface of this monumental city lies another layer of mystery. Archaeological investigations have revealed tunnels and subterranean chambers beneath several major structures, but especially beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, one of the most elaborately decorated pyramids in the city. In the early 21st century, researchers discovered a sealed tunnel extending more than 100 meters underground and leading to a series of ceremonial chambers filled with thousands of ritual objects. Among these artifacts were carved figurines, jade ornaments, marine shells transported from distant coastal regions, and strange spheres made from polished pyrite that shimmer like mirrors. Some archaeologists believe these reflective spheres may have created dazzling visual effects when illuminated by torchlight, perhaps representing stars in a symbolic recreation of the cosmos within an underground ceremonial environment. And these discoveries suggest that Teotihuacan was not only an architectural achievement, but also a place where ritual, astronomy, and symbolic representations of the universe were deeply integrated into the physical landscape of the city. Yet among all the remarkable features of Teotihuacan, one of the most fascinating and technologically significant mysteries lies in the materials used to build the city itself. The builders of Teotihuacan developed a remarkably resilient construction system that functioned in many ways like an early form of concrete, centuries before similar materials became famous in other parts of the world. This ancient construction technology relied heavily on a volcanic stone known as Tzontli, a lightweight yet durable rock formed from ancient lava flows in the surrounding region. Builders combined crushed Tzontli with lime-based mortar and other mineral aggregates to create a structural mixture capable of supporting enormous architectural loads. Once the stone framework of walls and pyramids was assembled, the surfaces were coated with thick layers of finely processed stucco made from burned limestone and carefully prepared additives. When applied correctly, this stucco hardened into a dense and highly durable surface that protected the underlying structure from erosion and weathering. What makes this material particularly extraordinary is the fact that many of these surfaces have survived for nearly 2,000 years, despite exposure to rain, wind, temperature fluctuations, and seismic activity common in central Mexico. In several areas of the city, the remnants of the stucco still cling to pyramid walls and residential buildings, preserving traces of the vivid murals that once transformed Teotihuacan into a brilliantly colored metropolis. Originally, the city did not appear as the gray stone ruins seen today. Instead, its pyramids and temples were covered in polished stucco surfaces, painted with bold pigments of red, blue, yellow, and black. Entire districts were decorated with elaborate murals depicting gods, animals, mythological scenes, and ritual processions. The durability of the stucco layer played a crucial role in preserving these paintings for centuries. Scientific analysis of surviving samples has revealed that the lime used in Teotihuacan stucco underwent complex chemical transformations during production, and producing a hardened surface with remarkable resistance to cracking and moisture infiltration. Some materials scientists have noted similarities between this technology and the famous durability of Roman concrete, which has also survived for millennia. However, the precise formula used by Teotihuacan builders remains only partially understood. Unlike Roman engineers, whose writings occasionally describe construction techniques, the people of Teotihuacan left behind no known technical texts explaining how their materials were manufactured or mixed. As a result, modern researchers must rely on microscopic analysis and experimental reconstruction to attempt to replicate the ancient formula. Early studies suggest that the careful balance between volcanic aggregates, lime mortar, and environmental curing conditions may have created a material uniquely suited to the geological and climatic conditions of central Mexico. The fact that such an advanced construction system existed in a society without written engineering manuals or metal-based tools raises profound questions about the level of scientific knowledge possessed by Teotihuacan's builders. Beyond its remarkable technological achievements, Teotihuacan also presents one of the greatest historical mysteries of ancient America. Who built it, and why it suddenly declined? Despite decades of archaeological research, no clear written records have been found to reveal the identity of its rulers or founders, though some theories link them to early Mesoamerican groups such as the Totonac or Otomi. Around the middle of the 6th century CE, the city experienced a dramatic collapse. Archaeological evidence shows that several important buildings in the ceremonial center were intentionally burned, especially those connected to political power and elite residences. This has led some scholars to suggest an internal uprising or social unrest, while others believe prolonged drought and environmental stress may have weakened the city's economic system. Whatever the cause, Teotihuacan was gradually abandoned, leaving behind its massive pyramids, carefully planned streets, and durable architecture as silent reminders of a powerful civilization whose true history is still not fully understood. How do you think the ancient builders managed to create construction materials durable enough to survive nearly 2,000 years at Teotihuacan? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Rising among the rolling hills of northern Morocco, not far from the imperial city of Meknes, the ancient Roman settlement of Volubilis stands as one of the most remarkably preserved archaeological landscapes of the Roman world. Once a thriving provincial capital on the far western edge of the Roman Empire, Volubilis flourished between the 1st century BCE and the 3rd century CE as an administrative, agricultural, and commercial center of the region known as Mauritania Tingitana. Today, its silent columns, triumphal arches, villas, and streets stretch across the landscape like fragments of a forgotten civilization. Yet beyond its historical importance, the city continues to fascinate archaeologists and historians because many aspects of its construction, planning, and artistic craftsmanship reveal a level of technical sophistication that still raises questions. Among the paved avenues and collapsed temples lie clues to engineering knowledge that appears strikingly advanced for its time, from carefully designed water systems to urban layouts that demonstrate an impressive understanding of infrastructure. However, perhaps the most astonishing feature of Volubilis, and one that continues to puzzle researchers, is the extraordinary survival and durability of its ancient mosaic floors. In many Roman cities across Europe and North Africa, mosaics have survived only in fragments or faded outlines. At Volubilis, however, entire floors of Roman villas remain almost intact, displaying vivid scenes that have endured for nearly 2 millennia. Walking through the ruins today, and visitors can still see detailed images depicting mythological stories, hunting scenes, animals, and daily life rendered in thousands upon thousands of tiny colored stones. Some of the most famous mosaics illustrate episodes from classical mythology, including scenes of Hercules performing his legendary labors, Neptune riding across the sea in a chariot drawn by sea creatures, and Dionysus surrounded by followers in elaborate celebrations. The remarkable aspect of these artworks is not only their beauty, but their durability. Despite centuries of exposure to weather, earthquakes, erosion, and human activity, many of these mosaic floors remain surprisingly vibrant and structurally stable. Their colors, created from carefully selected stones, terracotta fragments, and natural minerals, have resisted fading far better than many pigments used in later historical periods. This durability has led scholars to question exactly how the Roman artisans of Volubilis constructed these surfaces so effectively. Archaeological studies suggest that Roman builders did not simply place decorative stones directly on the ground. Instead, the mosaics appear to rest on a sophisticated multi-layer foundation system designed to protect them from shifting soil and environmental stress. Beneath the visible decorative layer lies a carefully prepared structure consisting of several strata of materials, a compacted base of stones and rubble, followed by layers of mortar mixed with lime and crushed ceramics, and finally, a finely smoothed surface upon which the mosaic tesserae were precisely arranged. This layered foundation may have functioned as a shock-absorbing platform, distributing pressure evenly across the floor and preventing cracks from spreading through the artwork. Even more intriguing is the level of geometric precision with which the tiny tesserae were placed. Many of the mosaics display curves, shadows, and perspective effects that required thousands of pieces to be aligned with remarkable accuracy. Achieving this level of detail, without modern measuring instruments or adhesives, raises important questions about the techniques and tools used by ancient craftsmen. Some historians believe that Roman mosaicists followed complex design grids drawn directly onto the prepared surface, while others suggest the possibility of full-scale templates created beforehand. Yet no surviving instructional texts fully explain the process used by artists in provincial cities like Volubilis, leaving many aspects of their craftsmanship open to interpretation. The survival of these mosaics is made even more mysterious by the environmental history of the region. Northern Morocco has experienced dramatic climatic variations over the centuries, including periods of heavy rainfall, soil movement, and seismic disturbances. In fact, a powerful earthquake in the 18th century, part of the same tectonic event that devastated Lisbon in 1755, caused significant damage across the region. Despite such destructive forces, large sections of Volubilis's mosaic floors remain intact, and suggesting that their construction incorporated structural resilience that archaeologists are still attempting to fully understand. Some researchers propose that the combination of lime-based mortar and crushed ceramics created a flexible yet durable substrate capable of absorbing subtle shifts in the ground. Others suggest that Roman builders deliberately selected specific types of stone tesserae that expanded and contracted at similar rates under temperature changes, reducing the likelihood of cracking. Even today, scientists studying ancient Roman building materials continue to discover surprising chemical properties that may explain why some structures from the Roman era have survived far longer than many later constructions. Beyond the mosaics themselves, the broader city of Volubilis reveals other examples of impressive engineering that hint at the technical knowledge possessed by its inhabitants. The urban layout follows a carefully organized grid pattern, with wide streets intersecting at regular intervals and public spaces arranged according to principles seen in major Roman cities across the Mediterranean. Beneath these streets ran drainage channels and water conduits designed to remove waste and supply fresh water to homes, fountains, and bathhouses. Such systems required a precise understanding of gradients and hydraulic flow, particularly in a city built on uneven terrain. Engineers had to ensure that water moved through the network using gravity alone, maintaining steady pressure without modern pumps or valves. Remnants of aqueduct structures and underground pipes suggest that Roman planners were able to calculate these gradients with surprising accuracy. While similar infrastructure existed throughout the empire, its presence in a relatively distant provincial city highlights how effectively Roman engineering knowledge was transmitted across vast territories, Equally impressive are the stone structures that still dominate the ruins. The triumphal arch dedicated to the Roman Emperor Caracalla rises above the ancient roadway with imposing symmetry, built from massive stone blocks fitted together with remarkable precision. Nearby stands the Basilica, once the administrative heart of the city, its rows of columns still marking the outline of a vast public hall where legal proceedings and civic meetings took place. Many of these buildings were constructed using techniques that allowed large stones to interlock without relying heavily on mortar, creating structures capable of withstanding centuries of environmental stress. The precision required to cut and transport these blocks across the surrounding hills remains an area of ongoing research. Archaeologists continue to investigate how Roman builders organized the labor, tools, and transportation systems necessary to shape such large quantities of stone. Yet despite its sophisticated infrastructure and flourishing economy, Volubilis eventually entered a period of decline during the 3rd century as Roman political power weakened in the region. Over time, the city was gradually abandoned, leaving its monuments exposed to the elements. Ironically, and this abandonment may have helped preserve its mosaics. Without extensive later construction to cover or reuse the materials, the floors remained largely undisturbed beneath layers of soil until modern excavations began revealing them again. Today, the mosaics of Volubilis are considered among the finest surviving examples of Roman mosaic art anywhere in the world, not only for their artistic quality, but also for the enduring mystery surrounding their construction. Standing among the ruins today, it is hard not to wonder what these stones have witnessed over the centuries. Nearly 2,000 years ago, skilled craftsmen arranged thousands of tiny tesserae into images that still survive today. Although archaeologists have uncovered clues about how they were made, the full secret behind their durability remains unknown. The mosaics of Volubilis continue to challenge modern ideas about ancient craftsmanship, suggesting that the technologies of the past may have been far more advanced than we once believed. What do you think allowed the mosaics of Volubilis to survive for nearly 2,000 years? Was it simply the engineering skill of Roman builders, or could there be ancient construction techniques we still do not fully understand? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hidden beneath layers of volcanic ash on the island of Santorini lies one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the Bronze Age, the ancient city of Akrotiri. Once a thriving urban center of the powerful Minoan civilization, Akrotiri flourished more than 3,500 years ago before being suddenly buried by the catastrophic eruption of the Thera volcano. Much like the later Roman city of Pompeii, the thick volcanic deposits sealed buildings, streets, and artifacts beneath protective layers of ash, preserving an entire city in astonishing detail. Yet what makes Akrotiri truly remarkable is not merely its preservation, but the surprising level of technological sophistication revealed by its architecture, infrastructure, and art, features that continue to puzzle archaeologists and historians even today. The excavations that began in the 20th century revealed that Akrotiri was not a primitive village, but a highly organized urban settlement with paved streets, complex neighborhoods, and multi-story buildings that rivaled the structural ambition of cities thousands of years later. Several houses rose 2 or even 3 stories high, constructed using a clever combination of stone, mud brick, and wooden reinforcement beams. This mixture of rigid and flexible materials may have helped the buildings withstand earthquakes, which were common in the volcanic Aegean region. Such structural awareness suggests that the inhabitants of Akrotiri possessed an advanced understanding of engineering principles, even though they lived in what historians traditionally describe as a relatively early stage of civilization. And some buildings featured internal staircases, large windows, and balconies overlooking narrow streets, implying a sophisticated urban lifestyle and a society that valued architectural comfort and aesthetic design. Beneath these streets ran another unexpected feature: a remarkably advanced drainage and sanitation system. Clay pipes carried water through parts of the city, while underground channels removed wastewater and rain runoff, preventing flooding and maintaining hygienic living conditions. In some houses, archaeologists have even identified early forms of toilets and bathing areas, revealing a level of urban planning that would not become widespread in many parts of Europe until thousands of years later. Yet among all these technological achievements, what the most breathtaking and mysterious legacy of Akrotiri lies in its extraordinary wall paintings, vivid frescoes that still radiate color and movement after more than 3 millennia. These artworks represent one of the most sophisticated painting traditions of the ancient Mediterranean, and they reveal a level of artistic mastery that appears astonishingly advanced for the time. Many of the murals were created using the true fresco technique, in which mineral pigments are applied directly onto wet plaster so that the colors bond chemically with the wall surface as it dries. This process produces remarkably durable images, but it also requires extraordinary speed and skill because the artist must complete sections of the painting before the plaster hardens, and the surviving frescoes from Akrotiri demonstrate that the painters possessed exceptional control over this demanding method. Even more remarkable is the palette of colors they used: bright reds derived from iron oxide, deep blues from rare minerals, brilliant yellows from natural ochres, and delicate whites and blacks were combined to create scenes that remain astonishingly vivid today. Some of these pigments, particularly the intense blues associated with mineral compounds, required complex preparation processes that archaeologists are still attempting to fully understand. The ability of these colors to survive thousands of years without significant fading has raised intriguing questions about the precise chemical techniques employed by the Minoan artists. The subjects depicted in these murals are equally fascinating. Instead of focusing solely on religious or royal imagery, many paintings portray lively scenes of everyday life and the natural world. Ships glide across stylized seas in grand maritime processions, suggesting Akrotiri's role as a powerful trading port connecting the islands of the Aegean. Exotic animals appear in vibrant detail, including antelopes and monkeys, creatures that likely arrived through distant trade networks stretching as far as Egypt or the Near East. Elegant figures wearing elaborate clothing participate in ceremonies or wander through landscapes filled with flowers and rocky hillsides. These images offer rare glimpses into the culture and worldview of the Minoan people, revealing a society deeply connected to the sea, nature, and long-distance exchange. What continues to perplex researchers, however, is how such a sophisticated artistic tradition emerged so early in the Bronze Age. The painters clearly possessed a strong understanding of anatomy, perspective, motion, and color harmony, skills that typically develop over long artistic traditions. Yet the origins of this knowledge remain unclear, partly because the written language of the Minoans, known as Linear A, has never been fully deciphered. Without written explanations of artistic practices or workshop techniques, much of the technology behind these masterpieces remains hidden. Another mystery surrounding Akrotiri is the eerie absence of human remains within the buried city. Unlike Pompeii, where the victims of the eruption were preserved in tragic detail, Akrotiri has yielded almost no skeletons. This suggests that the inhabitants may have recognized warning signs, perhaps earthquakes or volcanic tremors, and evacuated the settlement before the catastrophic eruption occurred. If true, it would imply that the people of Akrotiri possessed a keen awareness of natural hazards and the ability to organize a large-scale escape from the island. Where they ultimately went remains unknown. Some scholars believe they fled to other Minoan centers on Crete or nearby islands, while others speculate that the disaster contributed to wider upheavals across the eastern Mediterranean. The eruption of Thera itself was among the most powerful volcanic events of the ancient world, sending ash high into the atmosphere and triggering massive tsunamis across the Aegean Sea. Then such a catastrophe may have disrupted trade networks and weakened the broader Minoan civilization, eventually allowing rival cultures to rise in the region. Today, Akrotiri is considered one of the clearest windows into prehistoric life. Streets, houses, storage jars, furniture, and works of art remain preserved beneath layers of volcanic ash, allowing archaeologists to reconstruct the picture of a highly developed Bronze Age society. However, despite decades of research, the site still raises many major questions. How were the inhabitants of Akrotiri able to construct multi-story buildings capable of withstanding earthquakes? How did they design such complex water management systems? And most intriguingly, why have the frescoes managed to retain their vivid colors for more than 3,000 years? These paintings are not only works of art, but also technological achievements whose secrets have not yet been fully understood. Where are you watching this video from, and what time of day is it for you? Share your location and time in the comments below. Along the sun-bleached coastline of the Mediterranean, in modern-day Libya, lie the vast ruins of Leptis Magna, one of the most extraordinary cities ever built by the Roman Empire. Today, the site appears silent and almost frozen in time, a labyrinth of stone streets, temples, arches, theaters, and bath complexes stretching toward the sea. Yet 2,000 years ago, this place was a thriving imperial metropolis, a center of commerce, engineering, and monumental architecture that rivaled the greatest cities of the Roman world. Founded originally by Phoenician settlers around the 7th century BCE and later absorbed into the expanding Roman Empire, Leptis Magna reached its golden age during the reign of Emperor Septimius Severus in the late 2nd and early 3rd centuries CE. Severus himself was born in this city, and under his rule, Leptis Magna was transformed into a dazzling imperial showcase filled with grand public spaces, monumental buildings, and artistic achievements that still astonish archaeologists today. Beneath its visible grandeur, however, the city also preserves a series of technological mysteries. Questions about ancient engineering, construction methods, and artistic precision that continue to puzzle modern researchers. Walking through the ruins today reveals a city planned with remarkable geometric order. The main avenues run in straight lines across the landscape, intersecting at nearly perfect angles in a carefully organized grid that guided movement through markets, administrative buildings, and ceremonial spaces. And such urban planning required precise surveying techniques and a deep understanding of geometry long before modern measuring instruments existed. Beneath these roads lies another hidden layer of engineering, a network of underground drainage channels designed to carry rainwater and waste away from the city. Many of these channels remain intact after nearly 2 millennia, suggesting that Roman engineers had mastered sophisticated hydraulic planning capable of functioning even in a coastal environment where salt, erosion, and shifting soil could easily damage infrastructure. For historians and engineers alike, the accuracy of this urban layout raises a persistent question. What surveying tools and mathematical techniques allowed Roman planners to achieve such consistency across a vast urban landscape? Equally impressive is the scale of the architecture itself. Leptis Magna contains massive public structures, including the Severan Basilica, the Roman Forum, an immense theatre overlooking the sea, and the monumental Arch of Septimius Severus that still dominates the ancient crossroads of the city. These buildings were constructed using enormous blocks of limestone and marble, some weighing many tons and transported from distant quarries. The logistical challenge of moving such material across long distances and assembling it with high precision would have required coordinated labor, advanced lifting devices, and carefully planned construction sequences. Archaeologists believe that cranes, pulleys, and wooden scaffolding were used, but yet the exact methods remain partly speculative because very few detailed records survive describing the building process. Even today, some stones appear so precisely fitted together that it is difficult to imagine how ancient builders achieved such accuracy using relatively simple tools. Among all the marvels of Leptis Magna, however, the most astonishing achievements may be found not in the size of its buildings, but in the extraordinary artistry carved directly into their stone surfaces. The city is filled with elaborate relief sculptures and decorative carvings whose precision rivals that of later Renaissance art. Nowhere is this more evident than on the Arch of Septimius Severus, where entire scenes from imperial history unfold across towering limestone panels. Soldiers march in disciplined ranks. Emperors address the crowd, and mythological figures appear among flowing drapery and intricate floral patterns. Each figure is rendered with astonishing detail. Folds of clothing ripple across stone as if caught in motion. Facial expressions convey authority or devotion, and even the smallest ornamental patterns appear sharply defined despite the hardness of the material. These carvings were not merely decorative. They served as political narratives, celebrating imperial victories and reinforcing the power of Rome in distant provinces. Yet the technical execution of these reliefs raises a deeper mystery. The stone used in many of these structures is dense and difficult to carve, yet the surfaces display an almost microscopic level of detail that would require extraordinary control over carving tools. But scholars generally assume that Roman artisans used iron chisels, hammers, and abrasive polishing techniques to shape the stone. However, when examined closely, some carvings display lines so fine and surfaces so smooth that researchers continue to debate exactly how such precision was achieved. In certain sections of the Severan Basilica and nearby monuments, the transitions between raised figures and background surfaces are nearly seamless, suggesting a mastery of stone carving that pushed the limits of available technology. The artisans responsible for this work must have possessed not only exceptional artistic skill, but also an intimate understanding of how different stones fractured and responded to pressure. The time required to complete these carvings must have been immense, yet the sheer quantity of sculpted decoration throughout the city indicates that large teams of highly trained craftsmen were working simultaneously on multiple monuments. Their identities are mostly lost to history, leaving behind only the silent testimony of their craftsmanship. Beyond its monumental architecture and artistic brilliance, Leptis Magna also possessed a complex maritime infrastructure that helped transform it into a commercial powerhouse. The city's harbor was carefully engineered, with protective breakwaters and docking areas designed to shelter merchant ships arriving from across the Mediterranean. Roman hydraulic concrete, capable of hardening underwater, was likely used in parts of this construction, allowing engineers to build stable foundations even in shifting coastal conditions. Nevertheless, the harbor eventually suffered from heavy sedimentation carried by nearby rivers, gradually reducing its usefulness as a port. Environmental change, combined with political instability and economic decline within the Roman Empire, contributed to the slow fading of the city's prosperity. Over time, Leptis Magna was abandoned, and the encroaching desert began to bury its streets beneath layers of sand. Ironically, this process of burial helped preserve the city in remarkable condition. For centuries, the ruins remained largely hidden, protected from looting and destruction until systematic excavations began in the 20th century. When archaeologists uncovered the site, they discovered an urban landscape astonishingly intact, an entire Roman metropolis preserved with theaters, marketplaces, bathhouses, and sculpted monuments standing almost as they had nearly 2,000 years earlier. Today, Leptis Magna stands as one of the greatest archaeological sites of the Roman world and a powerful reminder of the advanced craftsmanship of ancient civilizations. Its massive stone structures reveal remarkable engineering skill, while its carefully planned urban layout reflects deep mathematical and architectural knowledge. Yet the most fascinating legacy of the city may lie in the delicate stone carvings that decorate its monuments. These intricately sculpted figures display a level of artistic precision that still challenges modern understanding. Even after decades of archaeological research, the exact techniques used to create these masterpieces remain partly unknown, leaving Leptis Magna suspended between history and mystery. So how do you think ancient craftsmen were able to carve such incredibly fine details into hard stone using what appear to be very simple tools? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Hidden deep within the dense tropical forests of Belize lies one of the most remarkable and mysterious cities of the ancient Maya world, Caracol. Today the ruins appear as quiet stone structures, rising above the jungle canopy, but more than 1,000 years ago, Caracol was one of the largest and most powerful urban centers in the Maya civilization. At its peak between the 6th and 9th centuries, this city may have supported a population exceeding 100,000 people, spreading across a vast urban landscape that covered more than 200 square kilometers. Long before modern cities emerged in many parts of the world, Caracol had already developed an extensive network of roads, monumental architecture, agricultural terraces, and complex water management systems. Yet despite decades of archaeological research, and many aspects of the city's technological sophistication remain difficult to fully explain, raising intriguing questions about the capabilities and knowledge of the ancient Maya. One of the first features that astonished archaeologists studying Caracol was the sheer scale of its urban planning. Rather than a small ceremonial center surrounded by scattered settlements, the city was an enormous integrated landscape connected by a network of raised stone roads known as sakbiob. These causeways stretched for many kilometers, linking temples, residential districts, and agricultural areas across hills and valleys of dense jungle. Even today, when viewed through airborne LiDAR scanning technology, the roads appear strikingly straight and carefully engineered, sometimes extending over difficult terrain where modern survey equipment would normally be required. The construction of such infrastructure suggests a level of organization and engineering coordination that rivals that of other great ancient civilizations. What remains puzzling is how the Maya accomplished such precise planning without the use of metal tools, draft animals, or wheeled vehicles. The stones used in these causeways were quarried, transported, and arranged in layered structures designed to remain stable in a humid tropical climate where heavy rainfall and erosion are constant challenges. Dominating the heart of the city stands the immense pyramid complex known as Ka'ana, meaning Sky Palace. Rising approximately 43 meters above the surrounding jungle, Ankara remains the tallest man-made structure in Belize and one of the most impressive constructions in the Maya world. The pyramid is not a single building, but a layered architectural complex built over centuries, with new temples constructed atop older ones in a process that gradually increased its height and complexity. Massive quantities of limestone had to be cut, transported, and precisely fitted into the pyramid's terraces and stairways. Archaeologists estimate that thousands of tons of stone were required to complete the structure, yet there is still no definitive explanation for how such materials were moved and assembled without advanced machinery. The precision with which the stones were placed suggests careful planning and skilled craftsmanship. While the pyramid's commanding height indicates that it served not only as a religious center, but also as a symbolic representation of cosmic order within the Maya worldview. Beyond its monumental architecture, Caracol reveals another remarkable achievement of ancient engineering: its extensive agricultural landscape. The surrounding hills were reshaped into large systems of terraced fields designed to prevent soil erosion while maximizing agricultural productivity. These terraces were integrated with reservoirs, canals, and drainage channels that controlled the flow of water across the terrain. Such systems allowed the city to sustain a large population despite the challenges of farming in a tropical environment where soil nutrients can quickly degrade. The scale of this agricultural infrastructure indicates long-term environmental planning and an advanced understanding of landscape management. Yet even with modern research techniques, scholars still debate exactly how the Maya organized the labor required to construct and maintain such an extensive system of terraces and water management networks. Among the many remarkable aspects of Caracol, perhaps the most intriguing involves the relationship between its architecture and the sky. The ancient Maya were known for their sophisticated understanding of astronomy, and evidence from Caracol suggests that celestial observation played a central role in the city's design. Several structures appear to be aligned with astronomical events such as solstices, equinoxes, and the movements of celestial bodies like Venus, which held great importance in Maya cosmology. The positioning of buildings, plazas, and causeways suggests that the city was not arranged randomly, but was instead organized according to a carefully planned cosmic framework. Certain temple stairways and architectural corridors seem to frame the rising or setting sun at specific times of the year, creating visual alignments that may have marked seasonal changes or ceremonial calendars. One structure in particular has attracted significant attention from researchers due to its potential astronomical function. Often referred to as the Caracol Observatory, this circular building contains narrow windows and passageways that appear to align with particular points on the horizon. Some scholars believe these openings may have been used to observe solar events or track the complex cycles of Venus, which the Maya followed with remarkable precision. Ancient Maya codices reveal that their astronomers could predict the movements of Venus with extraordinary accuracy, calculating cycles that closely match modern astronomical measurements. If the structures at Caracol were indeed used for systematic sky observation, it raises an important question. How did the Maya achieve such precise astronomical knowledge without optical instruments such as telescopes? The answer may lie in centuries of careful observation combined with architectural techniques designed to transform buildings themselves into observational tools. By aligning corridors, stairways, and windows with specific points on the horizon, the Maya may have created fixed sightlines that allowed them to track celestial movements over long periods of time. Even more intriguing is the possibility that the entire urban layout of Caracol reflects cosmological principles. In Maya belief systems, the universe was often conceptualized as a layered structure connecting the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. Monumental pyramids symbolized sacred mountains linking these realms, while plazas served as ceremonial spaces where cosmic cycles were celebrated through ritual events. When viewed from above, the arrangement of Caracol's architecture suggests deliberate spatial relationships that may correspond to celestial patterns or calendrical cycles. Such alignments hint at a worldview in which astronomy, religion, and urban planning were deeply interconnected. Thus, despite its technological achievements and cultural influence, Caracol eventually experienced a dramatic decline. By the 9th century, many Maya cities across the region were abandoned, and Caracol was no exception. The reasons behind this collapse remain one of the greatest mysteries of Maya history. Some scholars propose that prolonged drought weakened agricultural systems, while others suggest that political conflict, warfare, or economic instability may have played a role. Whatever the cause, the once thriving metropolis gradually fell silent, its temples slowly reclaimed by the surrounding jungle. Today, Caracol stands as one of the most fascinating archaeological sites in the Americas. Its monumental pyramids, extensive road systems, and vast agricultural terraces demonstrate a level of engineering and planning that challenges traditional assumptions about ancient societies. Yet perhaps the most compelling mystery lies in the city's relationship with the sky. The precise alignments between architecture and celestial movements suggest that the Maya possessed a profound understanding of astronomical cycles and integrated that knowledge directly into the design of their cities. How exactly they achieved this level of precision without modern instruments remains an open question, reminding us that even after centuries of research, the ancient city of Caracol still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. Did the Maya at Caracol truly design their city based on the movements of the sky, or are these astronomical alignments simply a coincidence of ancient architecture? And share your thoughts in the comments below. The ancient settlement of Çatalhöyük stands as one of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries of the Neolithic world, offering a rare glimpse into how humans lived more than 9,000 years ago. Located on the plains of central Anatolia in modern-day Turkey, this enormous prehistoric settlement flourished roughly between 7,500 and 5,700 BCE and is often considered one of the earliest large proto-cities ever known. At its peak, thousands of people lived together in a dense cluster of mud brick houses that formed a sprawling settlement unlike anything else from the same period. What makes Çatalhöyük so extraordinary is not merely its age, but the surprising complexity of its architecture, culture, and artistic expression, many aspects of which continue to puzzle researchers even after decades of excavation and study. One of the first things archaeologists noticed when studying the site is that the city appears to have been built without streets. Instead of roads or open passages separating buildings, the houses were constructed directly against one another in tightly packed rows, forming an almost continuous architectural block. Movement through the settlement likely occurred across the rooftops, where residents would walk from house to house before descending through openings in the ceiling using wooden ladders. The rooftops therefore functioned as the city's main circulation system, turning the entire settlement into a kind of elevated urban landscape. This unusual layout has sparked many theories among scholars, and some suggest the design may have offered protection against wild animals or hostile groups, while others believe it allowed the community to maximize space within a limited area. Yet despite numerous hypotheses, the precise reasons why this Neolithic society chose such an unconventional urban design remain uncertain. The construction techniques used throughout the settlement are themselves impressive. The houses were built primarily from mud brick, a material made from clay and organic matter that was shaped into bricks and left to dry in the sun. Although mud brick structures are often considered fragile, many of the walls at Çatalhöyük have survived for millennia, demonstrating a surprising durability. The buildings were typically rectangular and contained carefully plastered interiors, and often with raised platforms that served as living or sleeping areas. Over time, when houses became worn or structurally unstable, the inhabitants did not simply abandon the area. Instead, they filled in the old structures and built new houses directly on top of the earlier ones, gradually raising the settlement into a mound. This continuous cycle of rebuilding created the layered archaeological landscape that researchers excavate today. Yet perhaps the most astonishing aspect of Çatalhöyük lies inside these houses, where archaeologists discovered an extraordinary tradition of wall art and decorative plasterwork that has captivated scholars for decades. Many interior walls were repeatedly coated with smooth layers of white plaster, creating bright surfaces that served as canvases for complex paintings and reliefs. These murals depict scenes of animals, hunting rituals, geometric patterns, and symbolic imagery, offering rare visual insight into the beliefs and experiences of Neolithic people. What makes these artworks particularly remarkable is their age and preservation. Some of the paintings are more than 9,000 years old, yet traces of their pigments remain visible even today, suggesting that the inhabitants possessed a sophisticated understanding of mineral-based pigments and surface preparation techniques. Researchers have identified the use of natural minerals such as red ochre, charcoal, and other pigments that were carefully processed to create vivid colors. The paints were applied onto freshly prepared plaster surfaces, allowing the pigments to bond with the wall in a way that significantly increased their longevity. As in several houses, archaeologists discovered that walls had been repainted multiple times, with new layers of plaster covering earlier murals before fresh artwork was added. This repeated renewal suggests that wall painting was not a rare activity, but rather a continuous cultural practice deeply integrated into daily life. Each generation may have refreshed the imagery, reinforcing shared beliefs and traditions within the community. Among the most famous murals discovered at the site is a striking painting that some scholars interpret as one of the earliest known maps in human history. The mural appears to depict a dense cluster of rectangular shapes that resemble houses arranged closely together, possibly representing the settlement itself. Above these forms rises what many researchers believe to be a nearby volcanic mountain, often identified as Hasan Dağ, shown erupting with twin peaks and flowing lava. If this interpretation is correct, the artwork would represent an extraordinary achievement, a symbolic depiction of a landscape created thousands of years before formal cartography emerged in later civilizations. However, the interpretation remains debated, with some experts arguing that the shapes may represent animal skins or abstract patterns rather than buildings. The ambiguity surrounding this painting illustrates how much about the symbolic language of Çatalhöyük still remains unknown. Equally intriguing are the sculptural elements integrated into many of the interior walls. Archaeologists discovered installations featuring real bull horns embedded into plastered surfaces, often arranged in symmetrical patterns. These installations, been known as bucrania, may have held ritual significance and are frequently associated with spaces interpreted as shrines within the houses. The combination of wall paintings, sculptural reliefs, and symbolic animal remains created interiors that were both visually dramatic and spiritually meaningful. Such elaborate decoration within ordinary homes suggests that the boundaries between domestic life and ritual practice were deeply intertwined. Another striking cultural practice uncovered at the site involves burial customs. The inhabitants often buried their dead beneath the floors of their houses, placing bodies in shallow pits under the platforms where families lived and slept. Over time, the floors were sealed again with plaster, allowing daily life to continue directly above the resting places of ancestors. In some cases, these skulls were removed from skeletons after decomposition and possibly used in ceremonial contexts, indicating complex attitudes toward death and remembrance. These practices reinforce the idea that houses at Çatalhöyük were not merely shelters, but also symbolic centers of family identity and memory. Despite the settlement's large population, which may have reached several thousand residents at its peak, archaeologists have found little evidence of centralized political authority. There are no obvious palaces, monumental temples, or buildings clearly associated with rulers or elites. Instead, most houses appear relatively similar in size and layout, suggesting a society that may have operated with a high degree of social equality. As how such a large community organized itself without visible hierarchies remains one of the enduring questions surrounding the site. The discoveries at Çatalhöyük have challenged many traditional assumptions about early human societies. Long before famous civilizations such as Mesopotamia or Egypt emerged, this Neolithic community had already created a dense settlement with surprisingly complex social life and artistic culture. In particular, the wall paintings preserved for thousands of years reveal a level of symbolic expression and technical skill that few would expect from such an early period. Even today, archaeologists continue to uncover new details within the layers of plaster and mud brick, showing that the story of Çatalhöyük still holds many mysteries yet to be understood. Now, how do you think people, more than 9,000 years ago, were able to create wall paintings that remained so vivid and durable for millennia? Share your thoughts in the comments below. High in the sandstone cliffs of the American Southwest lies one of the most extraordinary archaeological landscapes in North America, the cliff cities of Mesa Verde National Park. Built by the ancient ancestral Puebloans between the 6th and 13th centuries, these remarkable settlements appear almost impossibly suspended beneath towering rock overhangs, hidden within natural alcoves carved into canyon walls. More than 600 cliff dwellings have been documented across the region, ranging from small clusters of rooms to large, complex settlements containing dozens or even hundreds of interconnected structures. Among the most famous of these is Cliff Palace, a vast architectural complex that includes more than 150 rooms and numerous ceremonial chambers. At first glance, the site seems less like a prehistoric settlement and more like a carefully engineered stone city embedded into the cliff face itself. What makes Mesa Verde so fascinating is not only its dramatic location, but the sophisticated engineering knowledge required to construct and maintain such structures in an environment where access is difficult, resources are limited, and weather conditions can be harsh. Even today, archaeologists and engineers continue to debate how the builders were able to achieve such remarkable levels of stability and durability with the tools and materials available to them at the time. The construction of these cliff cities required an extraordinary degree of planning and coordination. Many of the dwellings were built deep within alcoves located 20 to 30 meters above the canyon floor, areas that offer natural protection from rain, snow, and intense sunlight, but are also extremely difficult to reach. The inhabitants would have needed to transport stone blocks, timber beams, clay for mortar, water, and other materials up steep slopes or narrow pathways carved into the rock. Evidence suggests that ladders made from wood were commonly used to access the settlements, yet the scale of some structures implies a level of logistical organization that remains difficult to fully reconstruct. Moving building materials to such elevated locations without the use of wheeled transport or large domesticated animals would have required considerable labor and careful planning. However, the greatest mystery surrounding Mesa Verde lies not simply in how the buildings were constructed, but in how they were built so well that many of them remain standing after more than 7 centuries. The engineering techniques used by the ancestral Puebloans demonstrate a surprisingly advanced understanding of structural stability, material behavior, and environmental adaptation. Walls were typically constructed using carefully shaped sandstone blocks combined with a mud-based mortar mixture that appears simple at first glance but has proven remarkably durable over time. The builders arranged stones in tightly fitted layers, often alternating larger blocks with smaller fragments to create a form of natural reinforcement within the wall. This technique allowed the structures to absorb small movements caused by temperature changes, erosion, or shifting rock surfaces without collapsing. Yet in many places, the stones were carefully chipped and shaped so that their surfaces aligned precisely, reducing the amount of mortar required and increasing the overall strength of the wall. Some buildings also show evidence of plaster coatings applied over the masonry, creating smoother surfaces and possibly helping to protect the underlying materials from moisture and weathering. The combination of stone, mud mortar, and wooden support beams formed a composite structural system that distributed weight effectively while maintaining flexibility. One of the most remarkable aspects of this construction technique is its long-term durability. While modern buildings often require constant maintenance and repairs, many of the structures at Mesa Verde have remained largely intact despite centuries of exposure to wind, these temperature fluctuations, and occasional seismic activity. Researchers studying the mortar used in the dwellings have found that its composition varies slightly from structure to structure, suggesting that the builders may have adjusted their mixtures depending on local soil conditions or specific architectural needs. In some areas, the mortar contains ash, sand, and fine clay particles in proportions that create a dense and resilient bonding material once it dries. The precise methods used to prepare and apply this mortar remain only partially understood, yet its effectiveness is undeniable. The walls have endured not only the passage of time, but also the constant cycles of freezing and thawing typical of high desert climates. These conditions normally cause significant damage to stone structures, and yet the dwellings of Mesa Verde have survived far longer than many more recent constructions. The positioning of the settlements also played an important role in their preservation. By building inside deep rock alcoves, the inhabitants benefited from natural protection against rain and direct snowfall. The overhanging cliffs act as enormous natural roofs that shield the buildings from much of the weather that would otherwise erode exposed masonry. At the same time, the orientation of many alcoves allows winter sunlight to reach the dwellings while blocking the intense overhead sun of summer. This natural climate control system would have helped regulate interior temperatures, making the spaces more comfortable and reducing structural stress caused by rapid heating and cooling. Would such architectural choices suggests that the builders possessed a detailed understanding of how their environment could be used to enhance both the habitability and longevity of their structures. Within the cliff dwellings themselves, circular ceremonial chambers known as kivas reveal additional layers of architectural sophistication. These subterranean or semi-subterranean spaces were used for community rituals and social gatherings, and they incorporate carefully designed ventilation systems that allowed air to circulate within enclosed environments. Small openings and deflectors were positioned to guide incoming air currents downward before they spread across the chamber floor, preventing direct drafts while maintaining airflow. This design indicates that the builders were not only concerned with structural stability, but also with interior environmental control, demonstrating a level of architectural awareness that challenges traditional assumptions about prehistoric engineering. Despite decades of research, many questions about the cliff cities of Mesa Verde National Park remain unanswered. How did the builders coordinate large construction projects in such difficult terrain? And what techniques allowed their stone structures and mortar to endure for centuries? The remarkable durability of these buildings continues to intrigue engineers and archaeologists alike. Even more mysterious is the sudden departure of the inhabitants in the late 13th century, when the people of these cliff cities left the region and migrated south toward what are now Arizona and New Mexico. The reasons remain debated, with theories ranging from prolonged drought to major social changes. Today, the stone settlements of Mesa Verde stand as one of the most striking examples of ancient engineering in North America. Suspended within towering cliffs, they demonstrate how a society with limited technology was able to create architecture of extraordinary resilience and precision that has survived for centuries. In your opinion, how were ancient people able to build structures that have lasted for centuries on the high cliffs of Mesa Verde National Park using only very primitive tools? Share your theory in the comments below. Perched on a windswept plateau near the border of Turkey and Armenia stands the haunting ruin of Ani, often called the medieval ghost city and remembered as the legendary city of 1001 churches. Though the landscape today appears silent and abandoned. During the 10th and 11th centuries, Ani was one of the most prosperous cities of the medieval world. As the capital of the Bagratid Kingdom of Armenia, it thrived along the ancient routes of the Silk Road, attracting merchants and travelers from across Eurasia. At its peak, the city may have held more than 100,000 inhabitants and was filled with monumental churches, palaces, markets, and fortified walls. Today, its ruins still reveal remarkable engineering and architectural knowledge that continues to intrigue historians and archaeologists. The location of Ani itself already demonstrates an extraordinary understanding of defensive geography. The city was built on a natural triangular plateau, protected on two sides by deep gorges carved by the Akurian River, creating natural cliffs that functioned as enormous defensive barriers. Only one side of the plateau was easily accessible, and it was here that engineers constructed massive fortification walls stretching for kilometers across the landscape. These walls were reinforced with towers and multiple defensive layers, creating a formidable barrier against invading armies. Even in their ruined state, the surviving fortifications reveal an impressive degree of planning and structural precision. Large blocks of volcanic stone were carefully arranged into massive curtain walls, with some sections rising more than 10 meters high. The engineering challenge of transporting, shaping, and assembling such materials in the medieval period is itself remarkable, particularly considering the remote and rugged terrain surrounding the site. Among the city's most impressive structures is the Grand Cathedral of Ani, designed by the celebrated Armenian architect Ciudad the Architect around the year 1000. The cathedral represents a major milestone in medieval architecture because of its advanced structural design. Its tall, pointed arches and carefully balanced load-bearing columns demonstrate an understanding of architectural mechanics that appears strikingly ahead of its time. Some historians even speculate that innovations developed in Ani may have influenced later architectural traditions, including the Gothic cathedrals that appeared in Europe centuries afterward. Despite suffering earthquakes and partial collapse over the centuries, large portions of the cathedral still stand today, silently testifying to the skill of the engineers who built it more than 1,000 years ago. Yet perhaps the most intriguing and mysterious aspect of Ani lies in the extraordinary stonework visible throughout the city's ruins. The walls of churches, towers, and defensive structures display a level of craftsmanship that is both visually stunning and technically perplexing. Builders used locally available volcanic stones such as basalt and tuff, materials known for their hardness and irregular fracture patterns, yet these stones were cut into remarkably precise shapes, and blocks often fit together so tightly that the seams between them are barely visible, even after centuries of weathering. In some structures, the stones interlock in complex geometric patterns, suggesting that the builders possessed a highly developed understanding of structural stability and load distribution. What continues to puzzle researchers is the apparent precision with which these stones were cut and finished. The surfaces are frequently smooth and angular, with carefully measured edges that meet at exact corners. Considering the technological limitations of the 10th and 11th centuries, achieving such accuracy using only hand tools remains difficult to explain. Many of Ani's churches feature decorative stone facades carved with intricate relief patterns, crosses, and geometric motifs. These carvings display a level of symmetry and detail that implies the use of sophisticated measuring systems or templates. Some carvings extend across multiple stone blocks, yet maintain perfect alignment, meaning the stones must have been shaped with extraordinary foresight before being assembled into the wall. In other areas, curved architectural elements, arches, window frames, and column bases appear to have been carved with mathematical precision. Even modern stone masons examining these ruins often remark on the surprising complexity of the work. The question therefore arises, how did medieval builders achieve such refined stone cutting with the tools available at the time? Scholars propose several theories. Some suggest the use of advanced iron chisels combined with abrasive sand cutting techniques. The others argue that teams of specialized craftsmen may have developed highly refined measuring methods passed down through generations of Armenian stonemasons. Yet none of these explanations fully account for the consistency and accuracy visible across so many different structures throughout the city. Beyond the technical aspects of stone cutting, the durability of these constructions also raises intriguing questions. Ani lies in a region prone to powerful earthquakes, and historical records confirm that several devastating quakes struck the area during the Middle Ages. One major earthquake in the 14th century caused extensive destruction across the city, collapsing portions of buildings and defensive walls. Despite this, many structures remain partially standing today, and their foundations still intact after nearly a millennium. This suggests that the builders possessed an intuitive understanding of seismic resilience, perhaps incorporating flexible joints, layered stone foundations, or carefully distributed weight loads to reduce structural stress during tremors. Such knowledge would have been remarkable for its time and indicates a level of engineering sophistication rarely associated with medieval construction. Equally impressive was the city's integration into the vast commercial networks of the Silk Road. Archaeological evidence suggests that Ani was once connected to regional trade routes by bridges and roads that allowed caravans to transport goods across the surrounding river valleys. Remains of a large stone bridge once spanned the Akurian River, yes, linking the city directly with neighboring territories. Though only fragments of the bridge survive today, they reveal an ambitious structure built to support heavy traffic and withstand seasonal flooding. This infrastructure allowed Ani to thrive as a major hub of commerce, culture, and religion, drawing influences from Armenian, Byzantine, Persian, and Central Asian traditions. Despite its prosperity, the city's decline came with surprising speed. A combination of invasions, shifting trade routes, and natural disasters gradually weakened Ani's economic and political importance. After centuries of conflict between competing empires, including forces from the Seljuk Empire, the once thriving metropolis slowly emptied of its inhabitants. By the late medieval period, the great capital of the Armenian kingdom had transformed into a silent landscape of abandoned monuments. Today, the ruins stand isolated on the plateau, exposed to wind, snow, and time. Yet the precision of their stonework still commands admiration from historians and engineers alike. In many ways, Ani remains one of the most intriguing architectural mysteries of the medieval world. Its massive walls, elegant churches, and precisely carved stone blocks reveal technical abilities that appear remarkably advanced for their time. Although historians have proposed several theories about how these structures were built, many details remain unclear. The methods used to quarry, shape, transport, and assemble the enormous stones, especially those forming the city's churches and defensive walls, are still debated today. And even after centuries of research, the ghost city of Ani continues to guard many of its secrets, reminding us that ancient engineering may have been far more sophisticated than we often assume. How do you think medieval builders were able to cut and fit massive stone blocks with such near-perfect precision in the city of Ani? Do you believe it was simply a lost construction technique, or could there be another hidden explanation behind it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Rising from the dense tropical forests of Cambodia, the vast remains of Angkor, often described as the Angkor Imperial City, represent one of the most extraordinary achievements of the ancient world. At its peak between the 9th and 15th centuries, the Khmer capital was not merely a collection of temples, but a colossal urban landscape that stretched across hundreds of square kilometers near modern-day Siem Reap. Monumental structures such as Angkor Wat, the fortified city of Angkor Thom, and the enigmatic smiling towers of Bayon still dominate the landscape today. Yet these surviving monuments are only fragments of what was once a vast imperial metropolis. Modern archaeological technologies, particularly airborne laser scanning, have revealed that Angkor was among the largest pre-industrial cities on Earth, and with an immense network of roads, canals, reservoirs, and residential districts intricately woven into the jungle. This discovery alone has transformed our understanding of the Khmer Empire, suggesting that Angkor was not simply a ceremonial center, but a sophisticated urban system capable of supporting hundreds of thousands of inhabitants. Yet alongside its breathtaking scale lies a series of mysteries that continue to challenge historians, archaeologists, and engineers alike. Among the most astonishing features of Angkor is its vast hydraulic infrastructure, a massive water management network designed to control the powerful monsoon cycles of Southeast Asia. Enormous artificial reservoirs known as barrays stretch for kilometers across the landscape, some measuring more than 8 kilometers in length and capable of holding tens of millions of cubic meters of water. These reservoirs were linked by a dense web of canals, spillways, and embankments that allowed engineers of the Khmer Empire to regulate seasonal floods while providing a stable supply of water for agriculture throughout the year. The scale and complexity of this system have led some researchers to describe it as the most advanced hydraulic network of the pre-industrial world. Its careful integration with the surrounding terrain indicates an impressive understanding of hydrology and landscape engineering, raising the question of how such knowledge was developed so early in history. Yet perhaps even more puzzling than the waterworks is the monumental architecture that defines Angkor's skyline, and particularly the construction of its massive stone temples. The temples of Angkor were built primarily from sandstone blocks, many of which weigh several tons and were carved with remarkable precision. These stones did not originate at the temple sites themselves. Instead, they were quarried from the foothills of the Kulen Mountains, located roughly 40 to 50 kilometers away. The logistical challenge of transporting such enormous quantities of heavy stone across forests, rivers, and uneven terrain remains one of the greatest engineering mysteries associated with Angkor. Archaeologists estimate that millions of sandstone blocks were used in the construction of Angkor's temples. Yet surprisingly little direct evidence has been found to explain exactly how these stones were moved. Unlike many later civilizations, the Khmer builders left behind few detailed records describing their construction techniques, and the archaeological landscape reveals no obvious remains of massive road systems capable of supporting continuous stone transport on such a scale. Several theories have been proposed to explain this puzzle, yet none fully resolves the problem. One widely discussed hypothesis suggests that the Khmer may have relied heavily on waterways, floating the sandstone blocks along canals and rivers from the quarries to the construction sites. Given the vast hydraulic network surrounding Angkor, this explanation appears plausible. Barges or rafts constructed from timber could have carried the heavy stones across the water, reducing friction and allowing large loads to move with relative efficiency. However, this theory still leaves important questions unanswered. Transporting millions of blocks would have required an enormous fleet of vessels and a highly organized logistical system, yet archaeological evidence for such a fleet remains limited. Furthermore, many temple sites lie slightly elevated above the surrounding terrain, meaning the stones would still need to be hauled uphill after arriving by water. Another possibility is that the Khmer used elaborate systems of wooden sledges, rollers, and earthen ramps. Workers may have dragged the blocks across prepared roads using ropes and teams of laborers or animals. But even with such methods, the sheer volume of stone involved is staggering. Some estimates suggest that the construction of Angkor Wat alone required several million sandstone blocks, each precisely cut and fitted into place. The effort required to quarry, shape, transport, and assemble these stones would have demanded extraordinary levels of organization, manpower, and engineering knowledge. Yet the Khmer Empire achieved this feat centuries before the appearance of modern machinery, raising profound questions about how such large-scale construction projects were coordinated. Equally remarkable is the precision with which these stones were shaped and assembled. Many blocks at Angkor were cut so carefully that they fit together with minimal gaps, often without the need for mortar. The surfaces were smoothed and aligned with such accuracy that entire walls appear almost seamless. This level of craftsmanship becomes even more impressive when considering that many of the tools available to Khmer builders were relatively simple iron implements. And despite these limitations, artisans produced intricate carvings that cover kilometers of temple walls, depicting mythological scenes, historical events, and complex religious symbolism with extraordinary detail. The bas-reliefs of Angkor Wat, for example, stretch for hundreds of meters and display an artistic consistency that suggests the coordinated effort of countless skilled craftsmen working under a unified design vision. The layout of the temples themselves also reflects a deep cosmological symbolism rooted in Hindu and later Buddhist traditions. Angkor Wat, the most famous monument of the complex, was designed to represent Mount Meru, the mythical center of the universe in Hindu cosmology. Its towering central spires rise above a series of concentric galleries and moats, and symbolizing the cosmic mountains and oceans surrounding the divine realm. Some researchers have even suggested that the spatial arrangement of certain temples across the Angkor landscape may correspond to celestial patterns, hinting at sophisticated astronomical knowledge embedded within the architecture. Although these ideas remain debated, the precise alignments of certain structures with solar events, such as equinox sunrises, indicate that the builders possessed a keen awareness of celestial cycles. Yet perhaps the most haunting mystery surrounding Angkor is not how it was built, but why it was ultimately abandoned. By the 15th century, the once flourishing metropolis had begun to decline. Political conflicts, environmental changes, and the possible collapse of the delicate hydraulic system may all have contributed to the gradual dispersal of the population. Over time, the jungle reclaimed the vast city, swallowing roads, reservoirs, and temples beneath dense vegetation. For centuries, Angkor remained largely hidden from the outside world until European explorers in the 19th century encountered its towering ruins emerging from the forest canopy. Today, Angkor remains one of humanity's greatest archaeological treasures and a powerful symbol of the ingenuity of the Khmer civilization. Its monumental temples, vast urban networks, and sophisticated water systems reveal an impressive level of technological and organizational skill. Yet one question still fascinates researchers. How were millions of massive sandstone blocks transported across long distances to build this enormous complex? Until clearer evidence appears, the engineering secrets behind Angkor Imperial City continue to stand as one of the most intriguing mysteries of the ancient world. How do you think the ancient Khmer managed to transport millions of massive sandstone blocks from the Kulen Mountains to Angkor without modern machinery? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Hidden deep within the dense tropical forests of northern Colombia lies Ciudad Perdida, often called the Lost City. Perched high in the rugged mountains of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, this ancient settlement predates many of the most famous cities of the Americas. Archaeologists believe it was founded around the 8th or 9th century by the Tairona civilization, a sophisticated society that flourished in the region long before the arrival of Europeans. Remarkably, Ciudad Perdida may have been established nearly 6 centuries before the construction of Machu Picchu. Yet despite its age and isolation, it reveals an extraordinary level of architectural planning and engineering skill. Even today, surrounded by thick jungle and connected to the outside world only by a long trek through mountainous terrain, and the city continues to raise profound questions about the technological capabilities of the people who built it. The settlement is not a single structure, but an entire urban landscape carved into steep mountainsides. More than 200 circular and oval terraces were carefully constructed by cutting into the slopes and reinforcing the edges with precisely arranged stone retaining walls. These terraces once supported houses, ceremonial buildings, and communal spaces, forming a multi-level city that cascaded down the mountain like a gigantic staircase. Thousands of stone steps connect the terraces, weaving through the jungle and climbing the rugged terrain in carefully designed pathways. What makes this achievement extraordinary is the environment itself. The Sierra Nevada region experiences heavy tropical rainfall throughout much of the year, and steep slopes combined with saturated soil would normally lead to frequent landslides and erosion. Yet Ciudad Perdida has remained structurally stable for more than 1,000 years. Archaeological studies reveal that the builders engineered an advanced system of drainage channels beneath the terraces, allowing rainwater to flow safely downhill without undermining the foundations. Layers of stone, gravel, and compacted soil function almost like a natural filtration system, dispersing water pressure and preventing destructive runoff. Such hydraulic planning suggests that the Tairona possessed an advanced understanding of environmental engineering, even though they left behind no written technical records explaining how this knowledge was developed. One of the most striking features of Ciudad Perdida is the monumental staircase that leads up to the city itself. Visitors must climb more than 1,200 ancient stone steps to reach the upper terraces. These steps follow the natural curves of the mountain and appear remarkably consistent in height and spacing, allowing travelers to ascend steep terrain with surprising ease. Constructing such a pathway would have required enormous labor, organization, and coordination. The builders would have needed to transport countless stones through dense jungle and up steep slopes without the aid of wheeled vehicles or large draft animals. How the Tairona managed this logistical challenge remains uncertain. Some researchers believe large work crews may have moved the stones using wooden rollers, ropes, and human strength, but no clear evidence of these methods has been preserved. The mystery of transporting and positioning massive building materials in such an inaccessible landscape continues to puzzle archaeologists. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the lost city, however, lies in the remarkable stonework that holds the entire settlement together. The terraces and retaining walls are built from carefully shaped stones that fit together with surprising precision. Although the masonry is not identical to the polygonal stone techniques seen in the Inca world, many of the stones at Ciudad Perdida align so closely that gaps between them are minimal, creating walls that remain stable despite centuries of heavy rainfall, shifting soil, and encroaching vegetation. Thus, the precision of this construction becomes even more impressive when considering the technological limitations of the era. The Tairona did not possess advanced metal tools like hardened steel chisels, and yet they were able to cut, shape, and position large stones with a degree of control that suggests sophisticated craftsmanship. Some archaeologists propose that the builders used hammerstones, combined with abrasive sand and water, to gradually grind the rock into shape. But this theory still leaves many questions unanswered. The surfaces of certain stones appear unusually smooth, while others show subtle curvature that allows them to lock into place with neighboring blocks. This indicates that the builders were not simply stacking rough rocks, but carefully selecting and modifying each piece so that it would fit within a stable structural system. Even today, modern engineers studying the terraces have noted that the stonework distributes weight and pressure in a way that helps prevent collapse on steep slopes. Achieving such structural reliability without modern surveying equipment or precise measuring tools suggests a deep empirical knowledge of stone behavior and structural balance. Beyond the terraces themselves, the city reveals a complex urban design that hints at a thriving population and a highly organized society. Archaeologists believe that thousands of people once lived here, occupying homes built atop the stone platforms, while gathering in open plazas for trade, ceremonies, and social life. The layout of the city appears to follow a carefully planned pattern, with clusters of terraces connected by pathways that guide movement throughout the settlement. Certain areas seem to have been reserved for ceremonial purposes, while others served as residential districts. The arrangement of these spaces implies a social structure in which architecture played a role in shaping communal interactions and religious practices. Yet despite decades of archaeological research, many aspects of the city's organization remain unclear. The dense jungle that now surrounds the ruins may conceal additional structures still waiting to be discovered, suggesting that Ciudad Perdida could represent only a portion of a much larger network of settlements connected across the mountains. Another enduring mystery concerns the disappearance of the city itself. By the 16th century, during the early period of Spanish exploration in northern South America, the settlement appears to have been abandoned. Historians believe that diseases introduced by Europeans, combined with the disruption of indigenous societies during colonization, may have caused the inhabitants to leave the city and disperse into surrounding regions. However, historical records from Spanish explorers make almost no direct mention of such a large mountain settlement, raising the possibility that the city had already faded from memory by the time Europeans arrived. Over the following centuries, the jungle slowly reclaimed the terraces and stairways, hiding the ruins beneath thick vegetation. It was not until the early 1970s that treasure hunters searching for ancient artifacts stumbled upon the site, bringing the lost city back into the awareness of the modern world. Today, Ciudad Perdida remains one of the most fascinating archaeological sites in the Americas. Its terraces, stairways, and precisely built stone walls demonstrate the remarkable ingenuity of the Tairona civilization, a culture capable of transforming a steep tropical mountainside into a complex urban center. Yet the more researchers study the ruins, the more questions arise. How were such refined stone-cutting techniques achieved without advanced metal tools? How were heavy building materials transported through rugged jungle terrain and assembled with such stability? And how could a city of this scale remain hidden beneath dense forest for centuries? The lost city continues to challenge modern assumptions about ancient technological capabilities, suggesting that the people who built it possessed engineering knowledge far more advanced than we once believed. In your opinion, how were the ancient Tairona people able to cut and fit stones with such remarkable precision without advanced metal tools? What technique do you think they might have used? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hidden deep within the tropical forests of Chiapas in southern Mexico, the ancient Maya city of Palenque remains one of the most fascinating urban centers of the classic Maya world. Flourishing between the 3rd and 8th centuries CE, Palenque was not the largest Maya city, yet its elegant architecture, artistic sophistication, and historical inscriptions have long captivated archaeologists. Surrounded by jungle-covered hills and crossed by mountain streams, the city grew into an important political and cultural capital. Today, its temples, palaces, and pyramids rise above the forest canopy, revealing the remarkable achievements of an ancient civilization whose knowledge and skills still intrigue researchers. One of the most striking aspects of Palenque is its advanced approach to urban engineering, and particularly its complex water management system. The city was built atop a landscape crossed by natural springs and streams descending from the mountains of Chiapas. Rather than simply diverting or blocking these waterways, the Maya engineers of Palenque designed an intricate network of stone aqueducts, underground channels, and drainage systems that guided water beneath plazas and buildings. Some of these conduits were constructed with carefully shaped limestone blocks that formed enclosed tunnels, capable of carrying large volumes of water during the heavy rains typical of the region. In several places, the channels narrow dramatically, creating pressure as the water passes through, a feature that has led some researchers to speculate that the system may have functioned similarly to pressurized fountains or controlled water outlets. And if true, such hydraulic knowledge would represent one of the most sophisticated water systems in the ancient Americas. Yet despite decades of archaeological study, scholars still debate exactly how these systems were designed and whether the Maya fully understood the principles of water pressure involved. Equally remarkable is the architectural precision found throughout the city. The buildings of Palenque were constructed primarily from locally quarried limestone, shaped into blocks and assembled into temples, platforms, stairways, and palace complexes that have endured for more than a millennium in a humid tropical environment. The Maya did not possess iron tools, relying instead on stone implements such as obsidian blades and harder limestone tools, and yet the accuracy with which many blocks were cut and fitted together is astonishing. Walls were often aligned with careful geometric planning, and many structures feature the distinctive corbel vault, sometimes called the Maya arch, in which successive layers of stone project inward until they meet at the top to form a vaulted ceiling. Although structurally different from the true arches used by Roman builders, these vaults demonstrate an impressive understanding of weight distribution and balance. The ability to construct large roofed spaces using this technique required careful planning and precise stone placement, especially given the limited technology available to Maya builders. Among the most famous structures within the city is the imposing Temple of the Inscriptions, and a pyramid temple that served both as a monument and as a royal tomb. In 1952, the Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruiz-Luillier discovered a hidden staircase within the temple that descended deep into the pyramid, eventually leading to a sealed burial chamber. Inside lay the elaborate tomb of the powerful Maya ruler Quinichjanab Pakal, who governed Palenque during the 7th century. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone sarcophagus, topped by an intricately carved lid weighing several tons. The engineering challenge of lowering such a heavy stone into a chamber deep within the pyramid remains a subject of fascination. The staircase leading to the tomb had been carefully sealed with stones and rubble after the burial, suggesting that the pyramid itself may have been designed around the tomb from the very beginning, a level of architectural planning that required remarkable foresight and coordination. Yet perhaps the most extraordinary and mysterious achievement of Palenque lies not only in its architecture, but in the breathtaking sophistication of its stone carvings and hieroglyphic inscriptions. Few sites in the Maya world preserve such a rich and detailed written record of royal history, mythology, and cosmology. Throughout the temples and palace complexes of the city, limestone panels and tablets were carved with elaborate hieroglyphic texts that recount the lives of rulers, the founding of dynasties, celestial events, and ritual ceremonies that connected earthly kings to the divine realm. Yet these inscriptions form one of the longest and most detailed historical narratives preserved from any ancient civilization in the Americas. What makes them particularly astonishing is the extraordinary precision with which they were carved. Maya scribes and sculptors at Palenque achieved a level of detail that seems almost impossible given the tools available to them. Individual glyphs were often carved with delicate lines and subtle curves, forming complex symbols composed of multiple elements that had to be arranged perfectly within square frames. Some panels contain hundreds of such glyphs, arranged in carefully ordered columns and rows, each symbol representing sounds, words, or concepts in the Maya writing system. Even the smallest carvings demonstrate a remarkable consistency of style and proportion, suggesting that the artists possessed not only technical skill, but also a highly developed system of visual design. The precision required to produce these inscriptions would challenge even modern stone carvers using metal tools. Yet Maya artisans accomplished this using simple stone implements and immense patience. Beyond their technical mastery, the carvings of Palenque also reveal a sophisticated intellectual culture. The inscriptions record complex genealogies of rulers stretching across centuries, linking each king to divine ancestors and cosmic cycles recorded in the Maya calendar. These texts also describe astronomical events, ritual dates, and mythological episodes that tied the political authority of Palenque's rulers to the movements of the heavens. The ability to record such information in a coherent written system demonstrates that the Maya of Palenque possessed an advanced tradition of literacy, historical record-keeping, and symbolic communication. For many years, the hieroglyphs remained undeciphered, leading early scholars to assume they were purely decorative or religious symbols. Only in the 20th century did researchers begin to understand that they formed a true writing system capable of recording spoken language and historical events in remarkable detail. The artistry of these inscriptions goes far beyond simple writing. Many panels combine text with sculpted images of kings, gods, and mythological scenes rendered in astonishing detail. The rulers of Palenque are depicted wearing elaborate headdresses, jade ornaments, and ceremonial garments, while divine beings appear alongside them in complex compositions that blend historical narrative with cosmic symbolism. The balance between text and imagery suggests that the sculptors of Palenque were not merely artisans, but intellectual participants in the creation of royal propaganda and sacred storytelling. Their work transformed stone into a medium capable of preserving the political memory and spiritual worldview of an entire civilization. Even today, the sheer precision of these carvings continues to raise questions. How did Maya artisans achieve such fine control over their tools while working on fragile limestone surfaces that could easily crack or crumble? How were hundreds of glyphs arranged so perfectly across large stone panels without significant mistakes? And how were teams of sculptors trained to maintain such consistent artistic standards across generations? These mysteries remain part of the enduring fascination surrounding Palenque. Nearby, the sprawling palace complex known as Palenque Palace adds further intrigue to the city's story. The palace includes courtyards, galleries, and a unique four-story tower whose purpose remains debated among archaeologists. Some believe the tower may have served as an observation point for tracking celestial movements or monitoring activity across the surrounding jungle landscape. Whatever its original function, the structure demonstrates once again the architectural creativity and engineering skill of Palenque's builders. Despite decades of research, many aspects of Palenque's history remain unclear. By the end of the 8th century, the city began to decline and was eventually abandoned within a few generations. Scholars still debate the reasons, suggesting possibilities such as political conflict, environmental stress, or changes in regional trade networks. As the population disappeared, the surrounding jungle gradually reclaimed the city, burying its temples and palaces under dense vegetation for over 1,000 years until explorers rediscovered the ruins in the 19th century. Today, Palenque remains one of the most remarkable archaeological sites in the Americas. Its elegant architecture, advanced engineering, and extraordinary hieroglyphic carvings reveal a civilization of remarkable creativity and knowledge. Yet many mysteries remain, and leaving researchers with an enduring question. How did a society, using such simple tools, achieve such extraordinary accomplishments? How do you think the artisans of Palenque were able to carve hundreds of intricate hieroglyphs with such incredible precision using only simple stone tools? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Persepolis ceremonial city in modern-day Iran stands as one of the most extraordinary architectural achievements of the ancient world, a monumental complex that once served as the ceremonial heart of the vast Achaemenid Persian Empire. Founded by King Darius I around the early 6th century BCE and expanded by his successors such as Xerxes I, Persepolis was not merely a royal residence, but a carefully designed symbolic landscape intended to project imperial authority, cultural sophistication, and technological mastery. Rising dramatically from the plains of Fars, near the foot of the Kuhi Rahmat mountain, the city was constructed on an immense artificial terrace that remains one of the most impressive feats of engineering in ancient architecture. That this enormous platform measures roughly 450 meters by 300 meters and reaches heights of nearly 18 meters above the surrounding plain, creating a colossal elevated stage upon which the palaces and ceremonial halls of the empire were arranged. What makes this terrace particularly astonishing is the way it was constructed. Rather than simply building on flat ground, Achaemenid engineers reshaped an uneven mountainside into a vast level platform by combining natural bedrock with massive limestone blocks precisely cut and fitted together. The retaining walls of the terrace were built from huge stones, carefully placed without the use of mortar, a technique that required an extraordinary level of precision in stone cutting and alignment. Even after more than 2,500 years, many of these stones remain tightly joined, demonstrating a degree of engineering skill that continues to intrigue modern archaeologists. The construction of such a platform would have required the transport and positioning of enormous blocks of stone, some weighing several tons, yet the exact methods used by Persian builders remain uncertain. Scholars have proposed that large earthen ramps, sledges, and coordinated labor forces may have been employed, but no definitive archaeological evidence has revealed precisely how the ancient builders lifted and placed these massive stones so accurately across such a vast surface. Because the terrace had to support dozens of monumental buildings, it also had to remain structurally stable across centuries of earthquakes, erosion, and environmental change. And the remarkable durability of the platform suggests that its designers possessed a deep understanding of structural engineering and landscape modification, long before the development of modern engineering science. The terrace did more than provide a foundation. It fundamentally shaped the ceremonial experience of Persepolis. Visitors approaching the city would ascend monumental staircases that led gradually onto the elevated platform, creating a dramatic transition from the natural landscape into an imperial architectural world. This design amplified the psychological impact of the site, allowing the kings of Persia to receive ambassadors and delegations from across the empire in a setting that symbolized both physical elevation and political supremacy. Once on the terrace, guests encountered a series of grand buildings arranged according to a carefully planned spatial order, including the Apadana Audience Hall, the Hall of 100 Columns, royal palaces, treasuries, and ceremonial gateways. Each of these structures stood upon the artificial platform, demonstrating how the terrace functioned as the structural backbone of the entire complex. Without this monumental foundation, the architectural vision of Persepolis would not have been possible. Among the most impressive structures built on the terrace was the Apadana Palace, the great audience hall where foreign envoys and dignitaries gathered during imperial ceremonies. The hall originally contained 72 towering stone columns, each rising approximately 20 meters into the air and supporting a vast wooden roof structure. These columns were crowned with elaborate capitals carved in the shape of paired bulls or other mythological animals, whose extended backs supported the beams of the ceiling. The engineering principle behind these capitals allowed the enormous roof to distribute weight evenly across the slender columns, enabling the creation of large open spaces that would have been difficult to achieve with traditional, solid walls. This combination of aesthetic elegance and structural ingenuity illustrates the advanced architectural thinking present at Persepolis, where artistic symbolism and engineering practicality were seamlessly integrated. Equally remarkable was the sophisticated system of water management built into the site. Because Persepolis lies at the base of a mountain where seasonal rains and melting snow could easily produce flooding, the architects of the city constructed an intricate network of drainage channels carved into the terrace itself. Underground conduits, stone gutters, and carefully planned runoff paths allowed water to flow safely away from the monumental structures, preventing damage to the foundations and maintaining the stability of the artificial platform. Archaeological research has shown that this hydraulic system could divert large volumes of water, demonstrating that the builders possessed an advanced understanding of hydrology and long-term urban planning. Such infrastructure would have required precise calculations of slope, flow direction, and seasonal water behavior, suggesting that Achaemenid engineers were capable of complex environmental design centuries before similar systems became common in other parts of the world. Beyond engineering achievements, Persepolis also stands out for its extraordinary artistic craftsmanship. The stairways leading up to the terrace are lined with finely carved stone reliefs, depicting delegations from across the Persian Empire, bringing tribute to the king. Each figure is rendered with remarkable attention to detail, showing distinct clothing, hairstyles, and cultural attributes representing dozens of different regions under Persian rule. The precision of these carvings indicates the use of highly refined stoneworking techniques and tools, and their survival over millennia highlights the durability of the materials and methods used by the artisans who created them. Yet, despite the grandeur and technical sophistication of Persepolis, many mysteries still surround the site. Historians remain uncertain about the full purpose of the city, as evidence suggests it functioned less as a permanent administrative capital and more as a ceremonial center where rulers held symbolic gatherings and festivals such as the Persian New Year celebration of Novruz. The true scale of the workforce that built the terrace and its palaces, the logistics of transporting stone from nearby quarries, and the precise engineering methods used to construct the immense platform all remain subjects of ongoing research. What is clear, however, is that the artificial terrace of Persepolis represents one of the most ambitious landscape engineering projects of the ancient world. By transforming a rugged mountainside into a vast, elevated ceremonial stage, the builders of Persepolis created not only a city, but a monumental expression of imperial power carved directly into the geography of the land itself. How do you think the massive artificial terrace of Persepolis was actually constructed more than 2,500 years ago? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Rising among a surreal landscape of enormous granite boulders in southern India, the ruins of Hampi preserve the remains of one of the most extraordinary cities of the medieval world. Once the capital of the powerful Vijayanagara Empire, Hampi flourished between the 14th and 16th centuries and was described by travelers from Persia, Portugal, and Italy as a vast metropolis filled with markets, temples, palaces, and ceremonial avenues. Today, the city lies in silence across more than 26 square kilometers of rugged terrain, its shattered walls and towering temples scattered among natural formations of stone that appear almost otherworldly. Yet despite centuries of archaeological research, many aspects of the engineering, construction techniques, and artistic achievements found in Hampi remain only partially understood. So the city was not merely a political capital, but a monumental experiment in architecture, engineering, and urban planning, built with a level of precision and creativity that continues to puzzle historians and scientists alike. One of the first mysteries emerges from the way the entire city was integrated into its dramatic natural environment. Unlike many ancient capitals that were built on relatively flat terrain, Hampi occupies a chaotic landscape, dominated by gigantic granite boulders and ridges formed millions of years ago. Rather than removing these obstacles, the architects of Vijayanagara incorporated them directly into the defensive and architectural design of the city. Natural rock formations became fortification walls, gateways, watchtowers, and foundations for temples and palaces. Your massive defensive lines stretched across hills and valleys, blending artificial structures with the surrounding stone landscape so seamlessly that in many places it becomes difficult to distinguish what is natural and what was shaped by human hands. Archaeologists continue to debate how engineers of the 14th century managed to survey and organize such a large urban space with remarkable alignment and coherence, particularly when modern measuring tools did not yet exist. Roads extend in straight ceremonial avenues for hundreds of meters. Markets are arranged along precise axes, leading toward temples, and entire districts were planned with remarkable order despite the rugged terrain that surrounds them. Equally puzzling is the engineering involved in quarrying, shaping, and transporting the enormous blocks of granite that define the architecture of Hampi. Granite is one of the hardest stones used in ancient construction, requiring immense effort to cut and shape. Yet many temples, gateways, and pavilions in the city are built from blocks weighing many tons, fitted together with striking precision. Some structures appear to have been assembled without the use of mortar, relying instead on carefully cut surfaces that interlock tightly. Scholars have suggested that ancient builders may have used iron chisels, controlled heating and cooling of rock surfaces, or wooden wedges expanded with water to split stone. But the exact techniques that allowed craftsmen to produce such large quantities of precisely shaped blocks remain uncertain. Even more difficult to explain is how these stones were transported across the uneven landscape of boulders and hills. Without cranes or modern lifting machinery, builders somehow raised massive blocks to construct tall temple towers and monumental gateways that still dominate the horizon today. Another technological curiosity within the ruins is the extraordinary architectural complex of the Vitala Temple, widely considered one of the most remarkable temples in India. Inside this complex stands a pavilion, famous for its so-called musical pillars, stone columns that produce distinct tones when gently struck. Each main pillar is surrounded by several smaller shafts carved from the same block of granite, and each of these produces a slightly different pitch. Researchers have examined these pillars for decades and were attempting to understand how ancient sculptors could manipulate the density, thickness, and internal structure of stone to generate acoustic resonance. Because the columns are made of solid granite, rather than hollow chambers, the phenomenon remains particularly difficult to explain. Today, visitors are generally prohibited from striking the pillars to prevent damage, leaving scholars with limited opportunities to fully investigate the acoustic engineering that once transformed stone architecture into a musical instrument. Yet perhaps the most astonishing aspect of Hampi lies in the sheer artistic mastery displayed in its sculptures and stone reliefs, many of which continue to astonish modern observers. Across the ruins stand colossal statues, intricately carved pillars, and walls covered in detailed bas-reliefs depicting mythological scenes, royal processions, animals, dancers, and divine figures. Among the most famous examples is the monumental Lakshmi Narasimha statue, a towering sculpture carved from a single block of granite that rises several meters high. The statue portrays the fierce, lion-headed incarnation of the Hindu god Vishnu seated in a powerful posture, with bulging eyes, elaborate jewelry, and finely sculpted details that remain visible even after centuries of weathering. What makes this achievement particularly remarkable is the material itself. Granite is extremely resistant to carving, yet the sculptors of Hampi managed to produce delicate ornamental patterns, subtle facial expressions, and complex decorative elements with astonishing precision. Even small features such as the folds of garments, strands of necklaces, or stylized curls of hair were shaped directly into the hard stone surface. Similar mastery appears throughout the temples of the city, where pillars are covered in reliefs so intricate that they seem almost impossible to have been carved using the tools believed to exist at the time. Some columns display rows of miniature sculptures stacked in tiers, each figure distinct and carefully proportioned. Others depict mythical creatures with swirling forms and elaborate ornaments, carved with such depth and complexity that the stone appears almost fluid. In certain temples, entire narrative scenes unfold across the walls, portraying battles, ceremonies, and divine legends in remarkable detail. But the precision of these carvings raises questions about the methods used by ancient craftsmen. While iron chisels and hammering techniques are often cited as the primary tools, the level of refinement achieved in some of these sculptures suggests a sophisticated understanding of stoneworking that may have involved specialized polishing methods or advanced metallurgical tools that have left little trace in the archaeological record. The artistic sophistication of Hampi is also visible in architectural sculptures, such as the famous stone chariot within the Vitala temple complex. This ceremonial monument resembles a massive wooden temple cart used in religious festivals, yet it is entirely carved from stone. And every component, from the decorative wheels to the ornamental carvings that adorn its sides, demonstrates extraordinary attention to detail. Historical accounts suggest that the wheels may once have rotated, indicating that the monument was designed with mechanical precision as well as aesthetic beauty. The ability to replicate the appearance and structure of a wooden vehicle in stone while maintaining proportion and symmetry illustrates the remarkable skill of Vijayanagara artisans. Beyond sculpture and architecture, the ruins also reveal a sophisticated understanding of hydraulic engineering. Archaeologists have identified extensive networks of canals, reservoirs, stepped tanks, and water channels designed to distribute water throughout the city. These systems supplied royal gardens, temple complexes, and public spaces, while also supporting agriculture in the surrounding region. The entire system relied on carefully calculated gradients that allowed water to flow using gravity alone, without pumps or mechanical devices. In some places, water was guided through hidden channels carved directly into stone walls or underground conduits, demonstrating a level of planning and technical knowledge that rivals other advanced hydraulic systems of the ancient world. Despite its extraordinary achievements, the city of Hampi experienced a dramatic and rapid decline. Historical records suggest that after the Battle of Talikota in 1665, invading forces devastated the capital, and within a short time, one of the largest and most prosperous cities of its era was abandoned. Such today, only silent stone monuments remain scattered across the valley. These ruins stand as both a testament to the brilliance of the Vijayanagara civilization and a reminder of the many technological and artistic secrets that may have been lost with its fall. In your opinion, how were ancient craftsmen at Hampi able to carve such incredibly detailed statues and stone reliefs from extremely hard granite without modern technology? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Hidden in the forests of northeastern Louisiana, the ancient settlement of Poverty Point stands as one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites in North America. Constructed roughly between 1700 and 1100 BCE, this vast complex of earthworks predates many famous ancient monuments and represents an astonishing achievement by a society that, according to conventional archaeological understanding, possessed neither metal tools, wheeled transport, nor large-scale agriculture. Despite these apparent technological limitations, the people who built Poverty Point created one of the most sophisticated landscape-scale constructions of prehistoric North America. Even today, thousands of years later, the site continues to challenge researchers, and not only because of the immense engineering effort required to build it, but also because many aspects of its social organization, technological capabilities, and eventual disappearance remain difficult to explain with certainty. At the heart of Poverty Point lies an enormous arrangement of 6 concentric earthen ridges that form a massive semicircle stretching more than a kilometer across the landscape. These ridges rise gently above the surrounding terrain and are separated by corridors that may once have served as pathways or living spaces for the people who inhabited the settlement. From the air, the geometric precision of these ridges becomes strikingly clear. They appear carefully planned, with spacing that is remarkably consistent over long distances. In creating these formations required the movement of millions of cubic meters of soil, all of which would have been transported manually in baskets or carried by hand. Archaeologists estimate that the construction effort may have involved tens of millions of individual loads of earth. The scale of labor implied by this work raises an enduring mystery. How could a society often described as primarily composed of hunter-gatherers organize and coordinate such a monumental construction project? Unlike later civilizations known for massive architecture, the builders of Poverty Point left no written records explaining their methods of leadership, planning, or social hierarchy. Dominating the site is Mound A, an immense earthen structure that rises roughly 22 meters above the surrounding plain and extends more than 200 meters in length. Its unusual shape, sometimes interpreted as resembling a bird with outstretched wings, makes it one of the largest prehistoric earthworks in North America. What makes this mound particularly fascinating is evidence suggesting that it may have been constructed in a surprisingly short period of time, perhaps within only a few months. Soil analysis indicates that large volumes of earth were deposited rapidly rather than slowly accumulated over generations. If this interpretation is correct, it would imply the coordinated effort of thousands of workers acting under some form of centralized organization. Yet the nature of that organization remains unknown. Without metal tools, draft animals, and wheeled carts, the builders somehow managed to mobilize a workforce capable of reshaping the landscape on a massive scale. Another remarkable aspect of Poverty Point is the evidence of extensive long-distance trade networks. Archaeologists have discovered artifacts made from materials that originated hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. Obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, copper from the Great Lakes region, soapstone from the Appalachian Mountains, and various types of stone from the Ohio Valley have all been found at the site. These discoveries suggest that Poverty Point may have functioned as a major hub within a vast exchange network connecting distant communities across prehistoric North America. The existence of such an extensive trade system raises further questions about how these ancient societies communicated, traveled, and maintained connections across such enormous distances. Rivers likely played a crucial role as transportation routes, yet the social mechanisms that sustained these networks remain poorly understood. One of the most distinctive discoveries at Poverty Point is the presence of millions of small fired clay objects, known today as Poverty Point objects. These artifacts are typically spherical or oval and represent some of the earliest examples of fired clay technology in North America. Researchers believe they were likely used in cooking processes, possibly heated in fires and then placed into containers of water to boil food. However, the sheer number of these objects suggests they may have served additional purposes beyond simple cooking tools. Some scholars speculate they could have been used for specialized food preparation techniques or even ritual activities. Their widespread presence indicates a technological innovation that was both practical and widely adopted within the community. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding Poverty Point is not how it was built, but why it was abandoned. Around 1100 BCE, after centuries of activity, the settlement appears to have declined and eventually been deserted. Archaeological evidence suggests that the site did not experience a sudden violent destruction. There are no clear signs of warfare, large-scale burning, or catastrophic collapse. Instead, the abandonment seems gradual, just as if the community slowly dispersed and the monumental earthworks were left behind to be reclaimed by nature. This quiet disappearance has puzzled archaeologists for decades. Several theories have been proposed, but none provide a complete explanation. One possibility involves environmental change. Poverty Point existed within a complex network of rivers, wetlands, and forests that provided abundant resources for fishing, hunting, and gathering. If climate patterns shifted or river systems changed course, the delicate ecological balance supporting the settlement may have been disrupted. A decline in available resources could have forced the population to relocate in search of more reliable food supplies. Another theory suggests that the extensive trade networks that once sustained Poverty Point may have collapsed or shifted toward new centers of activity. If the settlement functioned as a regional hub within a broader exchange system, the loss of its strategic position could have gradually reduced its importance, leading inhabitants to migrate elsewhere. Some researchers also consider the possibility that social or cultural transformations played a role. Communities evolve over time, and shifts in belief systems, leadership structures, or economic practices may have made the centralized settlement less necessary. The same organizational forces that once mobilized thousands of people to build monumental earthworks may have eventually weakened or dissolved. Without those social structures, and maintaining such a large settlement could have become impractical. In this scenario, Poverty Point would represent not a failed civilization, but a transitional stage in the long development of indigenous cultures across North America. Despite decades of research, the final fate of Poverty Point remains uncertain. The massive earthworks still stand today, silent reminders of a society capable of remarkable feats of engineering and organization long before the rise of the more widely known civilizations of the ancient world. The people who shaped these ridges and mounds left behind no written explanations of their intentions, their beliefs, or the reasons they eventually departed. What remains instead is a landscape of monumental geometry, evidence of far-reaching trade connections, and traces of technological ingenuity that challenge traditional assumptions about prehistoric societies. Poverty Point continues to provoke new questions about the complexity of ancient communities and the hidden capabilities of cultures that existed thousands of years before recorded history. What do you think truly caused Poverty Point to be abandoned after centuries of activity? Climate change, the collapse of trade networks, or some other mystery we still don't understand? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Beneath the windswept volcanic landscapes of Cappadocia in central Turkey lies one of the most astonishing underground structures ever created by human hands, Derinkuyu Underground City. Hidden beneath the quiet town of Derinkuyu, this vast subterranean complex descends approximately 85 meters below the surface and contains at least 18 levels of tunnels, chambers, and living spaces carved directly into the earth. At its peak, the underground city is believed to have sheltered as many as 20,000 people, along with their livestock, food supplies, and essential resources. While the existence of underground settlements in the region has been known for decades, Derinkuyu stands apart because of its extraordinary scale, engineering sophistication, and the lingering questions surrounding how such an immense structure could have been created using the limited technology available in the ancient world. Even today, as archaeologists continue to explore its depths, many aspects of this underground metropolis remain difficult to fully explain. What makes Derinkuyu particularly astonishing is the fact that the entire city was carved manually out of solid volcanic rock. The region of Cappadocia is formed largely from a geological material known as tuff, a type of compressed volcanic ash that is softer than granite, yet still durable enough to support large underground cavities. Ancient builders took advantage of this unique material, but the challenge they faced was still immense. To create a city descending tens of meters beneath the ground, and they had to excavate vast volumes of rock while maintaining structural stability above. Every corridor, staircase, chamber, and ventilation shaft was cut directly into the stone using hand tools, most likely simple iron chisels, hammers, and primitive digging implements. The sheer amount of labor involved is almost unimaginable. Removing such an enormous quantity of rock would have required not only countless hours of physical effort, but also a coordinated system for transporting debris to the surface without collapsing the passages below. Yet what is perhaps even more remarkable than the scale of the excavation is the organization of the space itself. Derinkuyu was not carved randomly as a collection of tunnels. Instead, it reveals a carefully planned architectural layout that demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of structural engineering. The deeper one descends into the complex, the clearer it becomes that the builders were deliberately designing a functional city beneath the earth, rather than simply hollowing out caves for temporary shelter. Wide corridors connect living quarters, storage chambers, communal rooms, and defensive choke points. Certain levels were dedicated to specific functions, such as food storage or livestock shelters, while others contained areas that appear to have been used for worship, education, or social gathering. The presence of such an organized layout suggests that the builders had to consider how the weight of the rock above would distribute across the underground voids they were creating. Without an understanding of how to maintain stable ceilings and support columns, the risk of catastrophic collapse would have been extremely high. This raises a question that continues to puzzle researchers. How were ancient builders able to plan and execute such a massive underground excavation without the modern geological surveys and engineering calculations that would normally be required for projects of this magnitude? Even in the present day, constructing large underground facilities requires careful mapping of rock stability, ventilation requirements, and structural stress points. Yet Derinkuyu appears to have been created thousands of years ago with remarkable precision. The chambers are spaced in ways that distribute pressure across the surrounding rock, and vertical shafts connect multiple levels in a manner that maintains both structural balance and accessibility. Such features suggest a level of practical engineering knowledge that may have been developed gradually over generations, but is still difficult to fully reconstruct today. Another mystery concerns the logistics of removing the enormous volume of excavated material. To carve a city reaching 85 meters underground, with 18 levels of rooms and corridors, would have produced vast quantities of rock debris. Archaeologists have long debated how this material was transported out of the subterranean complex. Narrow stairways and shafts connect the levels, but the scale of excavation suggests that builders must have had an organized system for moving stone to the surface, possibly using baskets, sledges, or primitive lifting mechanisms. The absence of large debris piles near the site raises further questions about where all the excavated rock ultimately went. It is possible that much of it was dispersed across the surrounding landscape or used in construction elsewhere, but definitive evidence remains elusive. Beyond the engineering challenge of excavation, Derinkuyu also had to function as a fully livable environment underground. Within its labyrinthine depths, archaeologists have identified rooms that appear to have served as kitchens, storage chambers for grain and food supplies, communal gathering spaces, and even religious areas, including what is believed to be a church. There were also stables where animals could be kept safely during times of danger. These features indicate that the underground city was not merely a temporary refuge, but a place where people could remain for extended periods. The builders had to consider how to provide fresh air, water, and adequate living conditions for thousands of inhabitants hidden beneath the earth. To address the issue of air circulation, the city includes an intricate system of ventilation shafts that extend vertically through the rock to the surface. Some of these shafts descend more than 50 meters and were designed to channel fresh air throughout the underground network. Remarkably, this ventilation system allowed air to circulate naturally through convection, maintaining a breathable environment deep underground. The same shafts may also have functioned as wells, thus providing access to water that could not easily be poisoned by enemies on the surface. The sophistication of this ventilation design is striking because maintaining air quality in underground environments is one of the most complex challenges even in modern subterranean engineering. Defensive considerations also played a central role in the city's design. Massive circular stone doors, carved from solid rock and weighing hundreds of kilograms, were positioned at key passageways. These doors could be rolled into place to block corridors, effectively sealing off sections of the city from potential invaders. Small holes in the center of the stones allowed defenders to observe or attack intruders while remaining protected. The placement of these barriers created a layered defensive system that could slow or trap enemies attempting to penetrate the underground network. Despite decades of archaeological study, the true origins of Derinkuyu remain uncertain. Some historians suggest that the earliest levels may have been excavated by the Hittites during the first millennium BCE, while others believe that later civilizations, such as the Phrygians or Byzantine Christians, expanded the complex over centuries. The underground city was likely used repeatedly as a refuge during periods of invasion and conflict, particularly when hostile armies swept across Anatolia. Yet the exact timeline of its construction and expansion is still debated, and many of the deeper levels remain only partially explored. What continues to fascinate researchers and visitors alike is the realization that Derinkuyu represents not just a collection of caves, but an entire hidden world engineered beneath the earth. The city's enormous scale, its intricate layout, and the sheer physical effort required to carve it from solid rock all point to an extraordinary achievement of ancient ingenuity. Thousands of years ago, without modern machinery, electrical lighting, or advanced surveying tools, human builders created a subterranean metropolis capable of protecting entire communities. Even today, as scientists attempt to understand how such a project was conceived and executed, Derinkuyu stands as a powerful reminder that the technological capabilities of ancient societies may have been far more sophisticated than we often assume. Rising from the shallow turquoise waters off the coast of Pohnpei in the western Pacific Ocean, the ancient stone city of Nan Madol remains one of the most mysterious archaeological sites ever discovered on a remote island landscape. Built between approximately the 12th and 16th centuries, this remarkable complex consists of more than 90 artificial islets connected by a network of narrow canals, forming a labyrinth of ceremonial compounds, residential structures, and massive stone enclosures that appear almost impossible for the small island society that once inhabited the region to construct. Often described as the Venice of the Pacific, Nan Madol was the political and ceremonial center of the powerful Çatalhöyük dynasty. Yet the true story of how this extraordinary city was built continues to puzzle archaeologists and historians alike. At the heart of this mystery lies one of the most astonishing engineering features of the site: the enormous basalt stones used to construct its towering walls and monumental platforms. The builders of Nan Madol did not rely on small stones or simple coral blocks. Instead, they used massive columns of dark volcanic basalt, many of which resemble giant logs cut from stone. These columns were stacked horizontally in alternating layers, forming walls that resemble the interlocking structure of timber cabins. Yet unlike wooden beams, these basalt columns are incredibly heavy. Individual pieces can measure 4 to 6 meters in length and weigh anywhere between 5 and 25 tons, with some estimates suggesting even greater masses for the largest stones. Thousands of these colossal blocks were transported across the island and stacked with remarkable precision to create walls that in some places rise more than 7 meters high and several meters thick. The sheer scale of this undertaking is difficult to comprehend, especially considering the technological limitations of the society believed to have constructed it. What makes this achievement particularly mysterious is the apparent lack of suitable stone sources directly at Nan Madol itself. Geological studies indicate that the basalt used in construction likely originated from volcanic outcrops elsewhere on the island of Pohnpei, several kilometers away from the coastal lagoon where the city stands today. This means that every single one of the enormous basalt columns had to be quarried, transported across rugged tropical terrain, and then moved over water before being placed precisely into position within the artificial island complex. For a civilization that possessed neither metal tools strong enough for heavy quarrying, nor wheeled vehicles or large draft animals, such an accomplishment raises profound questions about the logistical systems and engineering knowledge they must have possessed. The mystery deepens when one considers the environment in which Nan Madol was built. The city does not sit on natural bedrock. Instead, it stands upon carefully constructed foundations made from coral rubble and other marine materials piled up to form artificial islets within a shallow lagoon. After these foundations were established, here the builders erected enormous basalt walls around them, creating enclosed compounds that functioned as temples, elite residences, burial complexes, and ceremonial platforms. The placement of the stones appears deliberate and systematic, suggesting that the builders followed a carefully planned architectural vision, rather than assembling the structures in a random or improvised manner. The most impressive of these complexes is the royal mortuary compound known as Nan Madol, whose massive basalt walls form one of the most imposing megalithic structures in Oceania. The challenge of transporting and positioning the basalt columns remains one of the greatest unsolved puzzles associated with Nan Madol. Modern researchers have proposed several possible explanations, yet none fully resolves the problem, and some scholars suggest that the stones may have been floated on large wooden rafts across the lagoon during high tide. Others believe that elaborate systems of wooden rollers, ramps, and rope harnesses could have been used to drag the stones overland and then lever them into position. However, experimental reconstructions indicate that even with large teams of workers, such methods would have required extraordinary levels of coordination, engineering skill, and labor organization. The fact that thousands of such stones were successfully transported and stacked suggests that the society responsible for Nan Madol possessed a sophisticated understanding of large-scale construction techniques that has largely been lost to history. Local oral traditions add another layer of intrigue to the story. According to legends passed down among the people of Pohnpei, the city was built by two powerful sorcerer brothers who used supernatural abilities to make the heavy stones fly through the air. While archaeologists do not interpret these stories literally, they reveal something important about how mysterious the construction of Nan Madol seemed even to later generations of island inhabitants. The legends suggest that by the time historical memory formed, the techniques used to build the city had already been forgotten, leaving behind only myths attempting to explain an engineering achievement that appeared almost magical. Beyond the extraordinary basalt architecture, the layout of Nan Madol itself reveals a highly organized urban design. The artificial islets are separated by straight canals that functioned as waterways, yet allowing movement by canoe throughout the complex. These canals also helped regulate water flow and may have served practical purposes related to drainage and tidal management. Such planning indicates that the builders possessed a detailed understanding of the lagoon's environmental dynamics. Constructing an entire city in this watery setting would have required careful coordination between stone construction, hydrological management, and long-term urban planning. Yet no written records survive to describe how the builders conceived or executed such an ambitious project. Even more puzzling is the sudden abandonment of the city. By the 17th century, Nan Madol appears to have been largely deserted following the collapse of the Çatalhöyük political system. The reasons remain uncertain. Some researchers propose environmental stress, including the difficulty of sustaining a large elite population on a small island ecosystem. Others point to political upheaval or shifting trade networks that may have undermined the authority of the ruling dynasty. Whatever the cause, the once thriving ceremonial center fell silent, leaving behind towering basalt walls slowly reclaimed by mangrove roots and tropical vegetation. Today, Nan Madol stands as one of the most enigmatic archaeological sites in the Pacific world. Its massive basalt stones continue to defy simple explanation, reminding researchers that ancient island societies may have possessed levels of engineering ingenuity that modern scholarship has only begun to understand. The sight of these enormous basalt columns, stacked in intricate patterns above the lagoon, still evokes the same sense of wonder that must have inspired the legends of flying stones centuries ago. Despite decades of archaeological investigation, the fundamental question remains unanswered. How did a remote island civilization, working without advanced tools or machines, manage to transport and assemble thousands of colossal basalt blocks to build one of the most extraordinary stone cities ever created in the ancient world? Petra, often called the Rose City because of the warm red and pink tones of its sandstone cliffs, stands as one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites ever created by human hands. Hidden deep within the rugged mountains of Jordan, Petra was once the thriving capital of the ancient Nabatean civilization, a culture that flourished between the 4th century BCE and the early centuries of the Common Era. What makes Petra so remarkable is not merely its age or historical importance, but the astonishing engineering achievements carved directly into the surrounding mountains. Instead of building their city from quarried blocks of stone like most ancient civilizations, the Nabateans created Petra by cutting entire monuments, temples, tombs, stairways, and ceremonial structures directly into the living rock. And more than 800 rock-cut structures are scattered across the valley and surrounding cliffs, transforming the desert landscape into a vast architectural complex. Even today, after centuries of archaeological study, many aspects of Petra's construction remain difficult to fully explain, especially the enormous scale and precision of its stone-cutting techniques. The most famous example of this astonishing craftsmanship is the monumental facade known as Al-Kazne, often called the Treasury, which suddenly appears at the end of a narrow canyon entrance. Standing roughly 40 meters tall and carved entirely from a single vertical cliff face, the structure resembles a classical temple, complete with Corinthian columns, pediments, statues, and elaborate decorative reliefs. And yet, unlike traditional architecture, where columns and blocks are assembled piece by piece, every element of this facade was carved directly into the rock itself. The precision required for such work is staggering. The symmetry of the columns, the balanced proportions of the upper and lower levels, and the smoothness of the carved surfaces all suggest an advanced understanding of geometry and planning. What continues to puzzle researchers is how the Nabatean builders managed to control the overall design while removing enormous volumes of stone from a vertical cliff. Evidence suggests that the workers carved these monuments from the top downward, gradually shaping the structure as they descended. This technique would have required extraordinary foresight, because any mistake made near the top could ruin the entire facade below. The builders had to visualize the final structure in 3 dimensions before the first cut was even made, yet there is little evidence of the measuring systems, scaffolding methods, or architectural guides that might have been used to achieve such accuracy. The mystery deepens when considering the tools available to the Nabateans. Archaeologists believe they relied primarily on iron chisels, hammers, and other relatively simple hand tools, yet the finished surfaces of many carvings appear remarkably smooth and carefully controlled. Even though sandstone is softer than harder rocks like granite, carving monumental architecture dozens of meters high while maintaining perfect symmetry would have been an immense technical challenge. Some researchers believe that extensive scaffolding must have been constructed along the cliff faces, and while others argue that builders may have worked from natural ledges or temporary platforms cut into the rock itself. However, clear physical evidence of these construction systems has largely disappeared over time, leaving the exact working methods uncertain. The precision of the decorative carvings is equally remarkable. Statues, niches, and architectural motifs were carefully integrated into the facade, as if the entire monument had been sculpted by a single, continuous artistic vision. The ability to maintain consistent proportions on such a massive scale suggests not only skilled craftsmanship, but also a highly organized workforce guided by experienced master builders. Petra's astonishing stone-cutting achievements are not limited to a single monument. Throughout the surrounding mountains, entire rows of tombs were carved into vertical cliffs, each with unique decorative designs and carefully shaped entrances. Larger structures, such as the monastery, known as Ad-Dir, rise nearly 50 meters high and feature massive columns and wide ceremonial terraces carved directly into the rock. Creating such enormous monuments required the removal of vast quantities of stone. Yet unlike traditional quarrying operations, the Nabateans left behind relatively little debris near the completed structures. This suggests that stone fragments may have been systematically cleared away during construction or reused elsewhere in the city. The scale of excavation implies that thousands of workers may have participated in these projects over many generations, gradually transforming the rugged valley into a monumental urban landscape. Another remarkable technological achievement at Petra is the city's sophisticated water management system, which allowed a large population to survive in an extremely arid desert environment. Seasonal flash floods regularly rush through the surrounding canyons, posing a serious threat to any settlement built in the valley. The Nabateans responded by developing an elaborate network of dams, channels, pipelines, and reservoirs designed to both capture precious rainwater and redirect destructive floodwaters away from the city center. Long channels carved directly into the rock walls carried water from distant springs, while ceramic pipes distributed it to storage cisterns and public fountains. These hydraulic systems required precise engineering to maintain stable water flow and prevent erosion, demonstrating a deep understanding of desert hydrology. The entrance to Petra itself also reveals evidence of large-scale landscape engineering. Visitors reach the city by passing through the Siq, a narrow canyon over 1 kilometer long with towering cliffs that rise dramatically on either side. Geological studies suggest that parts of this passage were deliberately modified by the Nabateans to create a more stable and controlled entry route. Sections of the canyon walls appear to have been cut and smoothed, while protective barriers and drainage channels were installed to guide floodwaters safely away from the path. These modifications indicate that the builders of Petra were not only skilled architects, but also capable landscape engineers who reshaped the natural environment to suit the needs of their city. Petra also reflects the cultural crossroads that define the Nabatean kingdom. Positioned along major trade routes connecting Arabia, the Mediterranean, and the Near East, the city absorbed artistic influences from multiple civilizations. Architectural elements found throughout Petra combine features of Hellenistic Greek design, Roman decorative styles, and traditional Near Eastern motifs. The result is a distinctive architectural language that appears both familiar and unique. This blending of influences may help explain the advanced design principles visible in Petra's monuments, suggesting that Nabatean architects adapted and reinterpreted ideas encountered through international trade networks. Despite its extraordinary achievements, Petra gradually declined as major trade routes shifted away from the region. and earthquakes and political changes may also have contributed to the city's abandonment. Over time, the once thriving metropolis faded into legend until it was rediscovered by Western explorers in the early 19th century. Even today, Petra continues to puzzle researchers. Its massive rock-cut monuments, precise architectural carvings, and advanced environmental engineering reveal a civilization of remarkable technical skill. Yet the greatest mystery remains the astonishing precision with which the Nabateans carved monumental facades directly into towering cliffs, transforming raw mountains into some of the most impressive architectural creations of the ancient world. Nos, how do you think the ancient Nabateans managed to carve such enormous and perfectly symmetrical monuments directly into towering cliffs with the tools available in their time? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Great Zimbabwe, located in the southeastern highlands of Zimbabwe, stands as one of the most remarkable and mysterious archaeological sites on the African continent. Built between roughly the 11th and 15th centuries, this vast stone city once served as the political and economic center of a powerful kingdom that controlled regional trade routes linking the interior of southern Africa with the Swahili coast of the Indian Ocean. Gold, ivory, and other valuable goods moved through this network, connecting the kingdom indirectly with merchants from Arabia, Persia, and even distant Asia. Yet beyond its historical importance as a trading hub, Great Zimbabwe continues to captivate historians, archaeologists, and engineers because of the extraordinary architectural achievements preserved in its ruins. Its massive stone walls rise from the landscape without mortar, carefully arranged from tens of thousands of granite blocks that have remained standing for centuries. These structures demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of balance, weight distribution, and stone craftsmanship that challenges many assumptions about technological capabilities in pre-colonial Africa. The most striking architectural feature of Great Zimbabwe is its extensive system of dry stone masonry walls. Unlike many ancient civilizations that relied on mud, clay, or mortar to hold stones together, the builders of this city constructed enormous walls by carefully shaping and stacking stones so precisely that they locked together under their own weight. Some of these walls reach heights of more than 11 meters and thicknesses of up to 5 meters, and stretching hundreds of meters across the landscape. The stones themselves are primarily granite, a material abundant in the surrounding hills. Granite is an extremely hard rock, which makes it durable but also difficult to work with, particularly using the relatively simple tools believed to have been available to the builders. Archaeologists believe that large granite outcrops were heated with fire and then rapidly cooled with water, causing them to fracture naturally along internal lines. These fractured pieces were then further shaped and trimmed to create blocks suitable for construction. Even so, the remarkable precision with which these stones were fitted together remains impressive, especially considering that the builders achieved smooth curves and stable vertical walls without metal reinforcement or modern measuring equipment. Among the most famous structures within the ruins is the Great Enclosure, a monumental elliptical wall that forms the largest single ancient structure in sub-Saharan Africa south of the Sahara Desert. The wall curves gracefully around a large open courtyard, reaching heights of about 10 meters and forming a continuous ring more than 250 meters in circumference. What makes the structure particularly intriguing is the subtle inward tilt of the wall, a design feature that improves stability and prevents collapse over time. Within the enclosure stands a mysterious conical tower, approximately 9 meters high and 5 meters in diameter. Unlike most towers in ancient architecture, this structure is completely solid and contains no interior chambers, doorways, or stairs. Its purpose has puzzled researchers for decades, so some scholars believe it may symbolize a granary, representing prosperity and agricultural abundance, while others suggest it may have held ceremonial or symbolic significance connected to royal authority or spiritual beliefs. Without written records from the civilization that built the city, its exact function remains unknown. However, one of the most fascinating and still poorly understood aspects of Great Zimbabwe lies not only in the walls themselves, but in the enormous logistical challenge involved in producing and transporting the stone used to build them. The ruins contain tens of thousands of granite blocks, each weighing anywhere from several dozen kilograms to several hundred kilograms. These stones were not randomly collected. They were intentionally shaped, selected, and positioned to create stable structures capable of withstanding centuries of weathering. This raises an important technological question. How did the builders extract, move, and organize such a vast quantity of stone in a pre-industrial society without wheeled transport, draft animals suited for heavy hauling, or metal cranes? The granite used in the walls likely came from nearby kopjes or rocky hills that surround the site. Even if the stones were quarried locally, moving them from quarry to construction area would still have required enormous coordinated effort. Researchers believe that workers may have used wooden levers, sledges, and rollers made from tree trunks to move heavy stones across short distances. Ramps of packed earth may have been built to lift stones gradually as the walls grew taller. Yet direct archaeological evidence for these construction techniques remains limited, leaving many details uncertain. The organization required to manage such a large workforce would have been substantial, suggesting that the society responsible for Great Zimbabwe possessed sophisticated systems of labor management, planning, and social coordination. Another puzzling aspect concerns the shaping of the stones themselves. Many of the granite blocks used in the outer walls are carefully trimmed to produce flat surfaces and consistent sizes, allowing them to fit together neatly without gaps. Achieving this level of uniformity would normally require specialized stone tools and considerable experience in masonry. While iron tools were known in the region during the period when Great Zimbabwe flourished, it remains unclear exactly how extensively they were used in the construction process. Some scholars suggest that repeated hammering with harder stones could have shaped the granite blocks, but such a method would have been slow and labor-intensive. The efficiency with which thousands of blocks were prepared suggests the existence of well-developed quarrying and stone-working techniques that have not yet been fully reconstructed. Beyond the technical challenges of quarrying and transport, the placement of the walls themselves also demonstrates an advanced understanding of structural engineering. The builders arrange stones in slightly curved layers that distribute weight evenly across the structure. Larger stones were often placed at the base of walls to create a stable foundation, while smaller stones filled gaps higher up. The result is a remarkably flexible yet stable structure capable of absorbing minor ground movement without collapsing. This engineering strategy helps explain why many of the walls have survived for more than 7 centuries, despite earthquakes, seasonal rainfall, and gradual erosion. The broader urban layout of Great Zimbabwe further reveals the complexity of the society that built it. The site covers roughly 700 hectares and includes several major architectural zones, including the hill complex, the Great Enclosure, and extensive residential areas in the valley below. Archaeological evidence suggests that these zones may have reflected social hierarchy, with elite rulers occupying elevated or enclosed spaces, while ordinary inhabitants lived in surrounding settlements made primarily from clay and wood structures that have long since disappeared. The stone monuments therefore represent only the most durable portion of a much larger and more vibrant city that may once have supported tens of thousands of people. Despite decades of research, many mysteries surrounding Great Zimbabwe remain unsolved. The exact methods used to quarry, transport, and assemble the massive granite blocks are still debated, and the true purpose of structures like the conical tower is unknown. What is certain, however, is that the city's enormous mortarless stone walls, still standing after centuries, demonstrate remarkable engineering skill. And Great Zimbabwe therefore remains not only a major archaeological treasure, but also a lasting puzzle that continues to challenge researchers today. In your opinion, how were ancient builders able to quarry, transport, and assemble tens of thousands of massive granite blocks to construct Great Zimbabwe without modern technology? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments section below.